This broadcast of the Competizione Performance League Jaguar GT3 Revival Series is brought to you by Malwar Transport and Assure Action Transport Expert. For oversized cargo and trucking logistics specialists of Quebec, visit www.malwar-transport.ca. And for an expert and professional trucking insurance firm specializing in property and casualty insurance solutions for freight across Quebec, Canada, and the United States, visit www.transportexpert.com. Good evening then, ladies and gents, and welcome to round 6 of the Competizione Performance League Jaguar GT3 Revival Series. As always, I am Regan Clark, and you join us here at the site of England's oldest surviving racetrack. Here in Leicestershire, as we find ourselves running parallel to East Midlands Airport, right here at Donington Park. Founded in 1931 by Fred Craner, a former motorcycle racer, Donington Park was a popular venue in non-championship Grand Prix racing in its heyday, with the Donington Grand Prix running from 1935 to 1939. At the outbreak of the Second World War, Donington was converted to a vehicle housing facility for the Allied forces in 1940. The track would remain dormant long after the end of the war until 1971, when the grounds would be purchased by business mogul and car collector Tom Wheatcroft. The track would officially reopen in 1977, which would go on then 40 years later to be purchased by the Motorsports Vision Group. In the modern day, Donington hosts races for World Superbike, the British Touring Car Championships, British GT, British Superbikes, and FIA TCR UK. Historically, it held races for the European Le Mans Series, DTM, FIA GT, and even a one-off Formula 1 race. Filling in for Fuji on the 1993 calendar, it comprised the basis of the Formula 1 Sega European Grand Prix. It was won by Ayrton Senna ahead of Damon Hill and Alain Prost in mixed conditions. In the modern day, it's 12 turns and a little under 2.5 miles of FIA Grade 2. It was once in the run to become the home of the British Grand Prix alongside Silverstone in the late 2000s, but due to the 2008 financial crisis, Donington missed out on its chances, and it's set to be an exciting venue here for two races set to follow, similar to last round at Brands Hatch, right here in another jewel of the MSV lineup. In terms of those previous wins then, where we left off on the last round as we begin the British leg of the championship, it was a chaotic start to say the least. Looking back into what happened in the opening of last week's first of two races, it was a calamity start from the front row that escalated all the way down the order to create one of the biggest pile-ups I think I've ever seen in all of my life. And after that chaotic start in the races at Brands Hatch, Byron Forrest clinched his first ever victory in a Competizione Performance League championship outside of the single races. In the second race, it would be back to business for Christian Lebay, who took his fourth win of the season, breaking a two-race-long win drought. In terms of what that stacks things into the championship standings, it leads right now for Lebay by 8 points to Byron Forrest in a gap that has now since shrunk since the start of the last round at Brands Hatch. Badiali, now having been forced to withdraw from competition, ends in third place and was set to drop over the course of the next couple of races. Carl Martel in fourth, only 2 points away, is set to pick up the last of those podium positions. Timo Tosto now in fifth with 123 points, ahead of Kevin Quain in sixth, and Anthony Cotti in 7th, Clinton Bourne in 8th, with Vincent Simard in 9th place. Those two separated by a meagre 1 point. And then rounding out the top 10, the man on screen at the moment, the number 5 of Richard Cecil, having fallen to 10th place. Now, in terms of the calendar and where we find ourselves positioned in today, we're now halfway into the British leg with this round coming. Then we'll be heading over to Snetterton and Alton Park in the next fortnight of racing before we head to that climactic finale, the first of its kind, a triple stint round coming up in mainland Europe at round 9 at Zolder in Heusden, Zolder, Belgium. In terms of what the regulations is looking like for today, bringing us into that conversation, it is much to the same as what we saw last week. Currently in the middle of 20 minutes of free practice before we were on to the first of our qualifying sessions, and then on to the first of our two races, then Quali 2 and Race 2 with no mandatory pit stop for either of the two races. Now, just like last week, we've got those new regulations sweeping in. Podium finishers from Race 1 only get one flying lap in the qualifying for Race 2. We got to see an exciting Quali 2 out of our podium sitters out of Race 1, and of them making the most of their podium was David Tangway, who ended up getting further up the road from Anthony Cotti and Byron Forrest, who were on the podium alongside him back in round 5. In terms of where things are looking right now, qualifying predictions still looking very, very close. We'll get on to that discussion in about 14 minutes time. Right now, we're on board with Richard Cecil as he makes his way up around that middle sector in through McLean's down towards Coppice. The number 5 having since fallen to the back of the top 10. It's going to be a slow climb back to a potential top 5 here. He's already been given a bit of a Deus Ex by the departure of Giovanni Badiali, and we are sad to say that as well. It's been a change in schedule for the Italian talent, and sadly he's been forced to withdraw from the championship. Ending on a high note though, Badiali was 3rd in the championship at the time of this announcement. Looking further around the field, here's David Tanguay on his way up towards McLean's and Coppice, and we'll try to catch on board here with the driver starting another flying lap in order to get our best possible chances of surveying this fantastic venue. I've had the pleasure of coming to this circuit myself only a few years ago. It was a mighty, mighty circuit to visit. It is much, much different from something like Brands Hatch or Silverstone, two other venues that I've been to in person. It is really quite an extraordinary circuit. Starting things off then here at Redgate, we're on board with Dan Junior Poulon, now 2nd fastest in free practice. Now this parabolic open hairpin right we've seen levied by plenty of drivers back in GT4 when we were last here in the Competizione Performance League to great effect, namely Giovanni Badiali. Down through the crane of curves then at turns 2 and 3. Down through the old hairpin at turn 4 as we make our way into the middle sector. Still on board with Poulon, making our way now up through Starkey's Bridge. That turns 5 and 6, and into a heavy braking zone here, into a sweeping right-hander. Very easy to run to that far left side of the track and pick up those track limits infractions down at McLean's, then into Coppice. This is arguably one of the toughest corners on track, because much like the Sheen curve at Brands Hatch last week, you are going into that corner effectively blind. It's a crested right-hander to bring us on the run down the Starkey straight, down towards the S's here. Since we're using the full layout of the track and not the national version, which is used in tandem with the full layout for the British Touring Car Championships, we will find ourselves heading down through turns 9 and 10 here at the S's and down towards the squared-off Melbourne hairpin. Now this is effectively 2 corners for the price of 1. You've got a nice big runoff there at the start of the Melbourne hairpin, so that does leave plenty of opportunities for our drivers to feel a lot more confident to get side by side. We saw it back in the era of GT4s. Will we be seeing so much so on the era of the much wider and much faster Jaguars? Only time will tell. Well, on the exit of Goddard's at turn 12, down towards the line goes Dan Junior Poulon on his last lap there, a 1:29.840 as he crosses the line. That was a very, very fast one indeed. He found himself, sadly though, by looks of it there, 738 thousandths off of his personal best. Currently a 1:29.102 from the number 44. Looking at where the timing charts are concerned, that puts him 1.3, just a smidge under, 1.4 seconds away from Christian Lebay, who so far dominates this session. Richard Cecil, we saw at the start of this session, is now 3rd place, not far up the road, actually by just under a tenth of a second, to the race 1 of 2 winner back in Brands Hatch. Byron Forrest still reeling from the glory of his first ever championship victory. He now drops to 5th place as having moved up to 2nd. David Tanguay in the number 30, black and white, and a little smidge of, what is that, orange or red there? Do decide in the chat over precisely what that colour is there. But Tanguay to 2nd place, getting closer and closer to that sub-second margin. That's where a lot of drivers on this slightly smaller grid than last time around will be aiming for as we head in towards qualifying today. Right now, we're just into that halfway mark of free practice, still out on track, yet to set times. Vincent Simard and Alex Albert, who I've been told by the folks over at Competizione Performance League, has now adopted the nickname Thunder Albert. Not entirely sure where it comes from at this time, but I'm sure we're set to find out. Will he live up to that name? Only time will tell us different. Right now, we've also seen out on track at this time was Byron Forrest. Still yet to see here. Actually, no, we have seen he's made his way up into the top 5 now. He's ahead of Martin de la Chevretière in the number 50. You know, about to see him down through Goddard's here on his trail. That's Vincent Simard. And towards the line goes Byron Forrest then, 2.4 seconds currently off, and then up to 4th place, makes 4 tenths worth of an improvement to put himself ahead of Richard Cecil. Now into that top 5 proper, and up the road by looks of it there by about 302 thousandths of a second. So very, very good stuff for Byron Forrest. Having since looked at that gap before, David Tanguay's now been pushed out another 2 tenths of a second before the start of qualifying. So we are only seeing the intensity continue to ramp up here for the 1:19 of Christian Lebay. Now with Badiali out of the equation, Byron Forrest is his current mainstay threat for the championship lead. That is currently decided by all of 8 points. heading into today's double set of 30-minute races. That's a double points opportunity, just as it will be next week and just as it will be the week after, and then a triple points opportunity to bring us to the major jackpot at the end of this championship. Still absolutely rife with scoring opportunities between these two, and as we saw back in Brands Hatch, really anything can and will happen. So today shouldn't be any different here in Donington Park. Out through Coppice he goes. Very, very well done there by the number 30 of David Tanguay. Made that one look remarkably easy. And of course, we discussed earlier on last week, or I suppose late last week, about the most recent news from Christian Lebay, namely in his current experiences in the NLRL Sunday League. Of course, he's been running 4 seasons strong now. He's in his 4th with Aston Martin. And this comes ahead of the announcement that he'll be seen next season, most likely behind the wheel of the very same 119 you see on track right now, as he announced he makes his move to Jaguar for Season 5 of the NLRL Sunday League. And I believe a lot of the data reinforcing that decision did come out of this series. We see David Tanguay into the pit lane he goes, currently just a single 10th up the road from Dan Junior Poulon, now to 3rd ahead of Richard Cecil, who makes his way up past Byron Forrest once again to 4th place. Forrest now to the back of the top 5. Currently in the session as well, Alex Albert in 6th place with Andrew Veldkamp 7th, Martin Della Chevrotier in 8th with Christophe Dupois in 9th. Casey Malz just made his way to the top 10 there ahead of Vincent Simard, Stephen Black and Julio Behena to make a 13-car grid. A lot smaller than what we saw back in Brands Hatch. Donington clearly hasn't been the most popular of choices with drivers, especially with the unorthodox combination of the Jaguar XK-G3, but it's set to be at least a very exciting set of rounds to follow today. We can't guarantee that the road is going to get any more smoother for our drivers heading to Snetterton, and certainly not to Alton Park, where we've seen all manner of chaos no matter the discipline. We've seen Alton Park in all shapes and colours. Now GT3, I believe GT4 as well, and even Porsche Cups over on VSR Phoenix. Every single time we've been to Alton, it has been an absolute rocker. So for round 8, do expect some heavy action to follow on December 9th. No stab of oversteer there, just out of the old hairpin for Richard Cecil. Currently finds himself a single set there, 300th up the road from Byron Forrest. A very closely decided 4th place right now. And especially when you consider the gaps between Poulon and Tanguay, that's a single 10th of a second, or 100 thousandths of a second. It is going to be a very closely decided top 5. Now, the question therein remains, will it be led by a small margin or a large margin by Christian Lebay? Because it really doesn't seem like at this time, now riding off the successes of his 4th victory this season, breaking the tie of a 2-race-long win drought. Can the momentum of the 119 be stumped once again? Or are we back in for another series of back-to-back wins for Christian Lebay? Only time will tell then, with 2 races set to follow. A little bit of upset there over the S's for Byron Forrest. He makes his way out of turns 9 and 10 down towards the Melbourne hairpin. And it is an odd corner to tackle because, of course, it is on the map at least structured to sort of remind you of a hairpin, but it is effectively 2 square rights compounded into one. The drivers, unlike this corner here at Goddard's, another more traditional style of hairpin, they really do have to form their own line out of just empty space, really. If we try and catch on board here with Christophe Dupois, we see heading down towards the Melbourne hairpin. We just want to discuss this point again because look at the breadth of the track there, making his way out of turn 11. It is a real opportunity to get side by side. We've seen it exploited many a time back in GT4. That was a hectic set of races back in the GT4 Pro-Am Cup America series. We see heading down towards the line goes Christophe Dupois. Also just having joined the session, we see now the number 6 Jaguar from the paddock as our cameras rise to meet him. That is Clinton Bourne, right now in the top 10 in the championship and looking at potentially some hopeful signs coming in to today's qualifying session. Right now, just under 5 minutes left to go, so we'll be on to those conversations not far from now. Just to give you the reminder of the regulations heading into this round, we're just coming towards the end of free practice and we're on to the first of our qualifying sessions. That'll be followed up by a 30-minute race, and then we get to do it all over again With the extra conditions in Quali 2, the podium finishes out of Race 1 will only get one flying lap. Whether it counts or not is going to be the deciding factor of their successes through Quali 2. Is Competizione Performance League's way of sort of shaking things up in that second qualifying session. We saw it used to great effect back in Brands Hatch. And if he is to follow on solid performances today, could Christian Lebay finally find himself a victim of the system he's aided to create? Well, only time will tell. David Tanguay out on track at the moment, still clawing ever closer to being within that sub-second margin. I think we could definitely see Tanguay challenge for the front row coming into qualifying today. And also there are quite a few additional factors to consider, namely those three behind him. Dan Poulon closest of that three to challenge for the front row, then Richard Cecil, then Byron Forrest. These two we've already seen to be very, very competent in terms of track aptitude. And for Byron Forrest, we saw the first of his championship victories last week, so we know he is winning material. The question is, do we have the winning combination here in Donington? We have seen a few disconnects there, so a little bit of connection trouble. We now drop down to, oh my goodness, yeah, you've seen them drop like flies here. I don't know whether or not there has been perhaps a larger connection issue. Yeah, you can see they're just dropping away. Oh boy, that is not looking good, folks. Well, we're trying to chase up information as to precisely what's gone on down there, but we've just dropped, what was that, 4 or 5 drivers among the fray, leaving us now with only 10 cars on the grid. I'm already seeing there word from within the Competizione Performance League server. There have been disconnects, warnings of disconnects. We now rise back up to 11 cars, with the most recent introductions back into the fray there for Julio Bahena, now rejoining the session as well. We've just seen is Alex Albert, Andrew Veldkamp by looks of it there as well. That was a very bizarre one, a mass disconnect right before the start of qualifying, and not the kind of signs you want to be seeing this late on in free practice. With only a few more minutes before the start of that 10-minute qualifier, this is going to put a lot of pressure where it really shouldn't have been needed. So we see here, this is Martin Della Chevrotier making his way out through the Melbourne hairpin. On his trails there in the background, that's David Tanguay in the number 30. Now the lobby back up to 13 cars. Hopefully the scares of a disconnect are now since behind us, as we're not far then from the start of qualifying. About a minute and a half then before the kickoff of the first of 2 qualifying sessions today. As we see here, out through turn 11 down towards turn 12. Will there be enough time in the books here for Clinton Bourne to put a lap time on the charts just before the end of free practice? We follow here with the number 6 making his way around turn 12. He has got enough time for one flying lap. The question is, will he take that opportunity or wait for his chances to arrive in qualifying? We'll stay on board with him right at the very end of free practice today. See there now up to 14 cars. We cut away here from Clinton Bourne just to see who has rejoined the session, and already we've seen more trouble there as it drops back to 13 cars. We see most recently having connected there Casey Malles right at the end of free practice today. Back on board then with Clinton Bourne, making his way now down the Starkey straight in towards the S's, barreling his way down in the number 6. That could have been track limits for him though, down at turns 9 and 10. So not far off the discussion of qualifying. We stay on board then with the number 6 making his way out round turn 11. Very wide on exit there, but he's preparing himself for the run down into Goddard's at turn 12. Having reconnected to the session, Byron Forrest, who was looking for a hopeful sign in today's race, is seemingly running into an early roadblock in the form of those connection troubles. Down to the line then goes Bourne. ends the session without a time to his name. So we have to wait until qualifying before we get to see what the number 6's pace is concerned with. Looking as well for the nearest car to the line. Right now, you'll be waiting on Christophe Dupois right at the very end here of free practice. So fingers on the trigger here, waiting for that opportunity to kick off. 10 minutes of qualifying. It's going to be quite a rip-roaring start expected out of that paddock. All hands on deck to get all machines out onto the field. Across the line then for the start of Quali 1.
Green line, give it all you got.
So we already see early doors movement, wasting absolutely no time was the 119. Then moving from ahead of him, we can see that's Richard Cecil's bright orange number 5. From behind him, the black and white of David Tanguay. So let's get out on the field and see. We see Clinton Bourne among that fray now behind Tanguay. Then behind him is Julio Bahena. Martin de la Chavoitiere looking to make his way out to the pit lanes at this time. Getting a look on board then with the driver who was seemingly leading that charge down through the Craner curves and through the old hairpin. Let's see if we can go and catch on board with the number 5. Richard Cecil first out of the gates, making his way up Starkey's Bridge for the start of qualifying today. And on to the discussion of qualifying predictions. Here you have it. Christian Lebay predicted at pole position a 127.352. That's a whole second and a few hundredths on top, ahead of Clinton Bourne in second place, a 128.395. Then much closer on his stead there by 600ths of a second. Dan Junior Poulon predicted at third place. He's ahead of Alex Albert, predicted at 4th. Julio Bahena predicted at 5th. Richard Cecil on your screens at the moment predicted to be in 6th place, but with chances there to move up into 5th place. Only separated by 303 thousandths of a second to Julio Bahena. Martin de la Chavoitiere predicted in 7th place, ahead of Karl Martel and Andrew Velkamp, 8th and 9th, with Anthony Cotti predicted in the top 10. Currently with a 14-car field, potentially set to grow even more before the end of Quali 1. Still leaves 4 drivers out of the equation. Among them is Byron Forrest, who we've already seen is capable of top 5 times. So we stay on board here with Richard Cecil. Sadly, the telemetry not resetting to give us accurate data for the first of his flying laps, so we'll just have to gun it the old-fashioned way like they did back in the 30s and run it by eye. Or alternatively, if you're a thinking man, you can look at the race logic in the centre of his dashboard. Staying on board then with Richard Cecil currently making his way down through the old hairpin in towards Starkey's Bridge. Number 5 already off to a great start in qualifying. And this is a make or break area, turns 7 and 8. Around McLean's and Coppice, you have to nail these 2 corners here. It doesn't matter if you have a good opening sector or a great final sector. If you just can't string it together here at turns 7 and 8, it can break even the best of lap times. As we saw back in GT4, it's a real area of frustration. Heading down towards turns 9 and 10 here at the S's. Taking things nice and smooth so far, not getting too close to the track limits. He just wants to put a time on the charts and then work from there. That's the modus operandi of Richard Cecil at this time, knowing he's got a good chance to fight from within the top 5 today, and that would definitely bring some justice back to the last couple of results he's seen in this championship. Looking back at it, it was 16th and 18th in Brands Hatch, and it was 14th in the final of the American races. His best result this season was back-to-back 4th place finishes in rounds 2 and 3 at Watkins Glen and the Circuit of the Americas over in New York and Texas. As we find ourselves here in Leicestershire, long away from either of those 2 states, find ourselves staring down the barrel of a potential return to the top 5 for Richard Cecil. He's just come across the line not long ago, and we see that he's now down to 6th after a very close start. Chief among them has been the gap decided there between David Tanguay and Christian Lebay. Lebay up to the fastest time of 128.432, with Tanguay second by 600ths of a second. Alex Albert third place, with Dan Junior Poulon in 4th. You can see those 2 separated right now by a factor of 25 thousandths of a second between each other on that second row. Vincent Simard in 5th, Julio Bahena in 6th, with Byron Forrest in 7th. And as you can see there, by looks of it, that's about trying to get the numbers on this dead on. I believe that to be, at this time, about 55 thousandths of a second up the road from Richard Cecil in 8th place. Martin de la Chevretier in 9th, with Christophe Dupois in 10th. We'll see if we can catch on board here with any drivers soon to make their way to the line. Right now, none of them are, as we catch back on board with the nearest drivers too, and that'll be the number 5 leading that charge. And then from behind him, we just saw there the 119 of Christian Lebay. So with Richard Cecil starting off the session in 8th place, he's got a very close margin to follow on here. First among them could be Byron Forrest in 7th place, and he does get Forrest for the luck there in 7th, and an improvement by Lebay into the 127s we go, and now 4 tenths up the road from David Tanguay, who brings the gap down from what was well over a second. Number 50 to the line. Here goes Martin de la Chevretier from 9th place. Stays there, and you can see divided between himself and Byron Forrest by a meager 5 thousandths between 8th and 9th place. So off to a very, very close start here as we already breach the halfway mark. Byron Forrest says no thank you as he jumps all the way up to 3rd place over the course of that last lap. Vincent Simard not off by a long shot there in 7th, 2.2 seconds, and as you can see, not far is the improvement needed to get up towards Dan Junior Poulon in the top 5. That's the goals for the number 120. We had quite the handful back in Brands Hatch. Battle of the Blues was one to be discussed between himself, Anthony Cotti, and George Todd. A very controversial bout back in Brands Hatch. And seemingly Simard, the only one left. Nearest to the line at this time, we catch on board the number 30 of David Tanguay, who has made himself a serious competitor in qualifying today. As we say that, we catch on board with him after the S's, where he's run into a serious spot of bother and puts himself back in the pit lane with just about 4 minutes left to go. You can see also in the pit lane there, Stephen Black and Byron Forrest, the 707 and the 824. Forrest 3rd with Black in 12th. And sliding his way out of the pits there. A very, very eager start once again for these final chances in Quali 1 for David Tanguay. He's put himself in a very, very confident spot. Bear in mind, he does find himself susceptible as a victim of his own success. And we saw this all the way back in GT4. That was from a really good start out of the Mercedes of Giovanni Battiali. He started from 3rd place, and we'll get on to that discussion as to what exactly I mean by this after our news segment when we get on to the formation laps, and you'll be able to see a lot more of a accurate visual representation of my point in motion. We see here across the line a moment ago, Alex Albert to 4th place, Clinton Bourne into the top 5, Dan Junior Poulon currently 6th place, Julio Bahena 7th, Vincent Simard in 8th, Richard Cecil in 9th place, currently seemingly next to be toward the line here. Not far from him up the road, the 119 of Christian Lebay. We'll see whether or not this classifies as a valid flying lap right now with 3 minutes left to go. The 119 barrels down towards the line. Can it be an improvement over a 127.627? To the line goes Lebay, and seemingly not the case this time around. For Richard Cecil, what could it be? Across the line, stays in 9th place on another set of flying laps. Not far from starting another set of flying laps is David Tanguay. We saw him rocket his way out of the pit lane for his last lap dashes here in Quali 1. Be a drastically different state of affairs for Tanguay, who find himself a victim of another one-shot qualifying session after Brands Hatch last week. If he stays on the podium by the end of today's race, that is. Well, from behind him on a valid flying lap down towards turn 12 of Goddard, here comes Julio Bahena. Running very wide, though, at the start there at turn 12. If he had a good lap now, it certainly may not be the case after. Down towards the line comes Bahena. From behind him, the number 50 of de la Chevretier from 10th to 6th. So a sizable improvement there from the 50. Then behind him, we saw an improvement by Clinton Bourne up to 4th place, and that was riding on the trails of Dan Junior Poulon briefly being in that top 5 once again. He now finds himself 4 tenths down the road from Alex Albert. Vincent Simard says no thank you and shoves the pair of them down an extra peg. He puts himself at the back of that top 5, and as you can see, by 2 thousandths to Alex Albert at the end of this qualifying session, with no more time left for the 36 to regain some of that lost time. At the best of times, he'll be in 6th for the start of race 1 of 2 today. Still a lot left to be decided here, with only 4 cars of this 14-car crew currently in the pit lane. We see there an improvement by Richard Cecil, now up the road from Julio Bahena, and as you can see, by a single hundredth for the number 5, now up to 9th for Richard Cecil. Number 30 not far from the line. So we saw David Tanguay over the course of the last couple of laps here, including his exit of the pit lane. Now down towards the line he goes with a minute to spare. So if this is an invalid one, as the data on our track map would suggest, he has at least one more opportunity to strike back here. 463 thousandths of a second between himself and Christian Lebay at the front of the pack here. He already finds himself on the front row. What can he do above that? Well, down towards Redgate, he's on his final flying lap. We'll catch on with him as and when we have updates to provide. The number 50 across the line a moment ago, Martin Della Chevrotier to 7th. Then from behind him, we see there Dan Junior Poulon up to 3rd. And behind him, Clinton Bourne in the top 5, separated from Byron Forrest by 3 thousandths of a second. And that's one up really by Simard and Albert, 2 thousandths at the end of their qualifying run. And that gap could still yet open one more time. And speaking of gaps opening, with a 1:27.627 to beat, Christian Lebay has one more corner here on his final lap of qualifying. Can he extend from 463 thousandths of a second, 4/10, 600ths and 3 thousandths to be precise, over David Tanguay? To the line comes the 1:19 at the end of quali 1, and he stays there. The number 5 from behind him, Richard Cecil, to the line from 9th place and stays there also. So next, heading towards the line on the exit of the S's down towards the Melbourne hairpin. Here's David Tanguay at the end of quali. We said we catch on with him towards the end of his flying lap. We'll see, can it be enough for pole position for the number 30? He has put a lot into this session so far. Closest among the fray to Christian Lebay on what was seemingly an unstoppable opening qualifier here in Donington for the 1:19. Here comes Tanguay to the line. And sadly, at the end of the road there, will stay in second place. From behind him comes the number 18, Julio Bahena, at the back of the top 10. Can he make a claim up further through the order across the line? Sadly, not the case. Here comes the number 44, pushed all the way out. And the number 6 to the line at the end of qualifying, Clinton Bourne, onto the second row. Pushes Dan Junior Poulon down to 4th. And that was a sizable hustle for the number 6, the Australian, in 3rd on a shock quali result there. He's got a very, very good race to look forward to as he puts himself in a power play position. Now, we'll discuss that in just a moment's time as to what we're getting onto. At the end of qualifying 1, Christian Lebay on pole position. Before we get on to the grid then, for race 1 of 2 today, 30 minutes set to follow, and then we get another 10-minute qualifying session with special conditions for our podium sitters. A one-shot quali for them. We'll be focusing on them for the first part of qualifying in quali 2, and then another 30-minute race to follow on from that as per the schedule we discussed earlier. But before we do all of that, we've got a touch of news, and where better to discuss the world of the British Touring Car Championship than right here at one of its prime venues. Exciting news from the BTCC as MB Motorsports moves to Toyota, now fielding 2 cars for the 2026 British Touring Car Championship. Previously, they've ran cars from BMW and Infiniti, with their most famous car in the last couple of years being that of Jake Hills, who won in the 2024 British Touring Car Championship. They're now fielding 2 cars, and who better to sign into the seat of a Toyota than Aaron Taylor-Smith, who spent his time last season with Toyota Gazoo Racing. He's their first signing for their 2026 lineup. It's set to be an exciting road ahead here for MB Motorsports, with Laser Tools as they now find themselves fielding 2 Toyota Corollas. Our last bit of news then comes from the world of... Oh, actually 2 more articles of news, I should say, one of which coming from IndyCar, as Rahal Letterman Latigan Racing announced they are signing Mick Schumacher for 2026 after his departure from the Alpine World Endurance Championship team. And our last bit of news comes from gaming, where Project Motor Racing, after great anticipation, launches to an overtly negative result. Players have been complaining over vehicle handling, physics and performance, as well as poor graphics. It seems then that the game has launched to an overwhelming flop. Oh, at the end of that news there, a little bit of a sour note for those looking forward to Project Motor Racing. Lord knows we were in that boat for the longest time here on TRTN. But now looking into the grid for today here in Donington Park. Race 1 of 2 for round 6 of the Competizione Performance League Jaguar GT3 Revival Series. And Christian Lebay on pole position. David Tanguay, in one of his best qualifiers, puts himself in second place ahead of Clinton Bourne on a shock result there at the end of his first of 2 quali sessions today. The number 6 up to 3rd up the road from Dan Junior Poulon, who starts in 4th place. Byron Forrest, race 1 of 2 winner from last week in Brands Hatch, starts from the back of the top 5, and joining him on that 3rd row, Vincent Simard, who was a real highlight in Brands Hatch as well, the number 120 in 6th place. From behind them, Alex Albert in 7th place with Martin de la Chevrotier in 8th. In 9th place, Richard Cecil and Julio Bahena to round out that top 10. Andrew Veldkamp in 11th place with Casey Miles rounding out the 6th row in 12th, and rounding out the 7th and final row of this grid for race 1 of 2 today, Christophe Dupois in 13th and Stephen Black in 14th. So, to discuss what it is I mean by this power play position of being in 3rd place, all you really need to do is take a look at the odd numbered cars here. 1, 3 and 5 specifically. LeBay, Bourne and Forrest. They'll be starting to the inside line of this parabolic open hairpin right. Tighter on entry, open on exit. So if we get on board here with Clinton Bourne's point of view, you'll see that if he nails that start, just as we saw from Badiali in the GT4 era, he can surf the line of LeBay heading down towards turn 1 and potentially have an easy line to overtake David Tanguay in 2nd place, putting him immediately from what is the 2nd row of the grid immediately into the 1st of those positions lining for the race lead. He's got a very, very good chance here, and we've known already what kind of chances Clinton Bourne's willing to take over the course of a race start. He is definitely one to push the envelope out, as we saw all as far back as his time with Chevrolet when he raced here at Donington not too long ago. We'll see what he can do, though, in the era of the Jaguars. But let's not take away from what's going on that front row as well. David Tanguay, with an exceptional qualifying session, seems closest to the pace right now of that of Christian LeBay, who seemed all of unstoppable in qualifying right now. He's dominated qualifying week in and week out, but as we've seen on a handful of occasions, namely exiting the American chapter and entering the British chapter, it is not a perfect win record the 119 pursues in this championship. Despite leading, he only leads by a minuscule 8-point gap to Byron Forrest, who starts on this grid from 5th place. If we had to see anything even close to what we got back in Brands Hatch's start at race 1 of 2, we could be in for another shock podium. And with a much smaller grid this time around and much harder opportunities for an incident of that scale to happen. To give you some context, looking back through the replays, this was back from race 1 of 2 last week at round 5 at Brands Hatch down through Paddock Hill. And this was that sizable impact that took well over half the grid with them on the start of that race. You can see only 15 seconds in when this incident occurred. Now, with much fewer opportunities here in Donington, a much more open circuit compared to the more traditionally closed Brands Hatch circuit, it's going to be much, much harder to replicate that kind of condition. So for a lot of our drivers, they can breathe that sigh of relief, but it's not going to be too easy a run down through the Craner curves as things do tighten up. You see here with LeBay trying to generate a little bit more heat into those Pirellis, not far from the starting line. He makes his way currently on to the Starkey Straight. Of course, this circuit runs parallel to East Midlands Airport, so one of its notorious features is that down the Starkey Straight and also what is then the Wheatcroft Straight down on what is effectively the Pit Straight, otherwise called the Wheatcroft Straight after Tom Wheatcroft, you will actually see aircraft taking off and landing over your head. What that also means is if you ever have the pleasure of staying the night over at Donington Park, whether it be on the campsites or nearby hotels, you'll be interrupted almost every 2 minutes to the exact second by a plane taking off, and they're not quiet. But oh well, that's how airports operate, I suppose. Heading down towards the line then, on the run out of turn 11 towards turn 12, not far from the start of 2 races today here in Donington Park. Down towards turn 12 we go then. Not our first rodeo here in Donington in the Competizione Performance League. We've seen it in GT4s, and now you see it live today for the run down towards the line for the first of 2 races here in round 6 of the Competizione Performance League Jaguar GT3 Revival Series, powered by Malwa Transport and Assure Action Transport Expert. Without further ado then, 30 minutes against the clock, and we are green and racing here in Donington for the first of 2 races today. Down towards the line then, carrying his momentum down through turn 1 goes Christian LeBay, and we see running all the way around the outside on an exceptional start, David Tanguay up into an early doors lead. But will he be fought back all the way down the Craners? Yes, he will. LeBay swaps it back for what was an ultra early lead there for David Tanguay, immediately snatched off of him before we've even hit turn 4. looking down the line, we see things already getting side by side down the order, as we can see side by side action for Andrew Veldkamp right up alongside Clinton Bourne at the back of that top 10. We follow here with Veldkamp, wandering his way there out of Starkey's Bridge, now up the road from Bourne, who finds himself backed onto Casey Miles' number 96 car, down through turn 7 for the first time today. Up the road, Richard Cecil starts his escape from 8th place. Martin Della Chevrotier finds himself a little distant here from Byron Forrest for the start of this race. Right now being pursued by Alex Albert and Richard Cecil down towards the S's. We see in chat as well there is Skino joining us. It's been a fantastic start to the race there. We see a great overtake right off the bat just as you join us by Alex Albert over Martin Della Chevrotier here in the Jaguar GT3 Revival Series. Down towards turn 11 we go. Of course, Skino as well, you yourself remember your time here at Donington all those years ago as we do here. That was a fantastic little time being over at the Donington Park circuit. Now we find our opportunity to be here once more, second season on the trot here in the Competizione Performance League. We see around the outside there was attempting to run the number 6 of Clinton Bourne over Andrew Veldkamp, failed to regain 9th place. Off of the 616 continues their charge up from 9th. Looking up into the top 5, we see things start to crunch up a little bit, especially between Vincent Simard, Byron Forrest and Alex Albert. All three of them now front to back by less than a second. Down through the crane of curves we go, down towards the old hairpin. Byron Forrest still in pursuit. Further up the order, getting a look through the grid after only 2 minutes in, we see a very close bout here for the front row with Dan Junior Poulon in pursuit of David Tanguay. Those are your three major battles, as it were. You've got towards the back of that top 10, Casey Miles, Andrew Veldkamp and Clinton Bourne, who has now since moved back up to 9th place. You have that fight in the middle of the pack here with Alex Albert, Byron Forrest and Vincent Simard. And then you have the fight up front, Dan Junior Poulon versus David Tanguay, down towards the S's at turns 9 and 10. Meanwhile, escaping their sight for the time being, Christian LeBay already off to a great start here, 1.7 seconds up the road with 3 minutes already under his belt. You see they're running very wide out of turn 11, and all of this is in that preparation run down towards turn 12. Now, back in GT4s, we saw drivers go as far as almost Scandinavian, flicking their car to give as much momentum as possible down through Goddards. And you can see where that issue comes from, because it is a slight crest downhill, as it were, almost a dip in the road. It is much, much harder to keep the car rotating when gravity is effectively working against you. It makes the front end go a little bit lighter than it should. And there is a lot of understeer down to that hairpin. We see here for Byron Forrest, currently still in pursuit of Vincent Simard. Right behind him is Alex Albert. We'll stay on board with these three. We head down through the crane of curves. And this is just a beautiful sight. If you've ever sat down at the grandstands facing down on the exit of Redgate, you can watch all the way down to turn 7. And that's kind of what you see from our driver's point of view as they made their way out of Redgate. It's this sweeping vista. It is a beautiful, beautiful circuit here at Donington Park. And what a pleasure it is to be here once again. Down through turn 7 and McLean's, you see knocking those inside barriers. Vincent Simard trying to use absolutely every inch of the track here, following in his wake. We're on board with the 824 of Byron Forrest. From behind him, there's Alex Albert in the number 36. Then further down the line, that little fleck of orange in the background, that is Richard Cecil, not far from Clinton Bourne, who has since made up another position here, the Australian up to 8th. Now having since passed up Andrew Veldkamp and Julio Bahena. Actually, it could be more of a case that something else has gone up the road to put them in that position at this time. I think yes, it could have been for Martin Della Chevrotier. We do find him now outside of that top 10. By looks of it there, with a little bit of damage on his number 50. Currently, he's right behind Julio Bahena, off by, at the last interval there, 0.6 of a second. Speaking of, it was 0.6 of a second between all these three, Vincent Simard, Byron Forrest and Alex Albert. You can see on the contrary, it is much, much closer as we get down towards the next set of timing lines. Now 0.9 between Simard and Forrest, and there you can see more poignantly half a second between Albert and Forrest at the back of that top 5. So there is definitely that consideration of a fight at the top 5 going on right early doors in the session. 5 minutes in here in Donington. We've not wasted any time whatsoever. See here for Dan Junior Poulon. He has now lost a little bit of stead in his efforts to get up and alongside David Tanguay. A very admirable defensive second place there by the number 30, leveraging his position to great effect on what has been one of his best starts of the season. Stay on board here. We're back on board with the 824 Byron Forrest He was a real talk of the town back in Brands Hatch, took his first ever championship win here in the Competizione Performance League. Now looking for, at the very least of things today at the end of race 1, for a top 5 finish once more to continue his efforts and keep things lively in his championship fight with Christian Lebay. 8 points between first and second. We see down through the S's, someone's already kicked up the tyre wall to the far end of the track there, as per tradition at Donington. Down through to turn 11. We are definitely looking now more than ever at that fight of 5th place in favour of Alex Albert to gain position over Byron Forrest. He's looking at a defensive fight as Vincent Simard continues to push forth up that road. He's losing to... Oh, my goodness. That is... Yes, it is. That's Dan Junior Poulon. That's the yellow flags out after turn 12. A spin for the 44. So all of these drivers have since been upgraded a position. So it may seem. Now as it's been upgraded to 4th, and we see getting the leg up in and amongst the chaos, Alex Albert now up to 4th place, pushing Byron Forrest down to 5th. And technically, yes, he is still in that fight for 5th place, because barreling onto him is the number 5 of Richard Cecil. So in the fog of war there, the main victim, the 44, a spin out for Dan Junior Poulon. We see looking up the inside, Richard Cecil on Byron Forrest. It's contact up through turn 7. Following in his way, Clinton Bourne looking for an opportunity, looking to fight back to the top 5. Byron Forrest now finds himself between a rock and a hard place. Richard Cecil got that move in there, albeit with a little bit of a knock at turn 7. Now he's got both barrels of Clinton Bourne scorned from that race start. Looking for revenge here. Is out for blood. Bourne wants in on this potential prize pot. Moreover, we've got points to prove here for Richard Cecil. He's not found his way to the top 5 in well over, looking at it, his results over the course of the season, well over 3 races. So trying around the outside, Clinton Bourne on Byron Forrest, still gunning for what is now the fight of 6th place as Richard Cecil continues to evade. Oh, it's more contact. Byron Forrest turned around by Clinton Bourne. That has gotten ugly down at turn 12. Looking at that on the replay. Heading down towards turn 12. We can still see the live footage as now Byron Forrest falls in behind Julio Bahena before we hit Redgate at turn 1. Contact between Bourne and Forrest. Was it a case there of perhaps Clinton Bourne not giving really enough room to the 824? Byron Forrest was still well within his rights to the line. We see a little bit of desync as we reconnect now. Nothing to worry about for our drivers on track. That's simply a reaction our side. Seemingly whenever we go to the replays, found that to be quite a bizarre symptom of it all. Every time we go to the replays, we come back and this session lags for a little bit and then comes back to normal. We see here Dan Junior Poulon is going to be absolutely bereft. He started this session on a very high note, was on that second row, was fighting in that top 3, and it all came apart out of turn 12. Now finds himself 13th as he makes his way round turn 4. For Clinton Bourne, he's been a man on a mission. With that most recent contact, he's not going to find himself in the particularly good books of the stewards today. We see up the road Richard Cecil, now really up in the thick of it. He launched his way up the inside on Vincent Simard and Alex Albert. Now we have a 3-way scrap for the last of those podium positions. Let's get on board with Richard Cecil. Down through turn 12, we have another yellow flag out, this time involving the 58. Not the 58, sorry. That's Timo de Tosto, who's just joined the session and will be an active part of Quali 2. So it was the number 6 and another car. We've still yet to confirm that ourselves. We're watching here with Richard Cecil in that fight of 3rd place, now being forced to defend from Vincent Simard and Alex Albert after a very ambitious move, 2 positions for the price of 1. The American driver with a point to prove hasn't seen a result inside the top 5 since looking as far back here. This would be for round 3 back at the Circuit of the Americas. So now that we're across the pond on what has been meandering results in Brands Hatch, both of them outside of the top 10, Richard Cecil has come back with a vengeance here in Donington Park, currently on the podium 10 minutes in. We do see we've dropped down to 14 cars. Timo de Tosto originally made the 15th, so we are down a driver. It's good to see that de Tosto is in this session, still within a chance to fight inside of that top 10. He will be a round down heading into Quali 2. The upside of it is he won't be forced to do that single shot qualifier. In the background, we see side-by-side action here potentially coming up. Alex Albert, we've seen he's got quite the affinity now for diving very late on the inside of his opponents. We'll see here from Vincent Simard's point of view as he's forced into a defensive fight of 4th place on board with that of Vincent Simard. Down towards turn 12 we go. The number 120 under siege by Albert's advances in the number 36. Getting a look over his rear as we head down what is here at the Wheatcroft Straight, down towards turn 1. Running very late on the brakes there, the 36 almost running himself out of road, but tucks things in for a slightly later apex on the first of 2 parts here at Redgate. He's got more than enough momentum to carry down through the craners, so following still with Vincent Simard. And the leading of these 2 cars in the fight for 4th place, Richard Cecil, since having disappeared up the road, he has really took the baton and ran with it. Now 1.5 seconds clear of the 120 since his move. In chat saying depending on what car they lock it to next season, I might have to get in on this after my late shifts. But as far as I'm aware with Competizione Performance League, now looking back towards the calendar as we stay on board with the fight with Vincent Simard and Alex Albert, looking at that calendar, the season wraps up on December 16th. We'll be picking back up on the 2nd season of the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series, and that's set to pick up on January 7th, 2026. But just to interrupt that, most recent news, a drive-through penalty for Vincent Simard. So this is joy and elation for Alex Albert. He's got 1 free position up for grabs there, but he's still not without present company. Lurking in the background there, you can see that blue and yellow number 616. That's Andrew Veldkamp, who, like Albert, has had a royal send up through the crowd. Same story for that orange Jaguar up in front. Richard Cecil now onto the podium and actually running away with it as he found himself on that last lap alone, 7 thousandths clear, but as you can see, the gap is much more prevalent on track. So we now found out who was involved in that incident with Bourne. So the number 6 down in an incident in turn 11, and who he caught was none other than Byron Forrest, who has now since retired from this race, stating that's the 3rd race this season he's been taken out by Bourne. So now definitely some animosity between the 824 and the number 6. A steward's investigation seems most likely post race 1. Still watching here, Alex Albert in pursuit. The 120 on your screen, still the drive-through penalty to serve, so he perhaps feels maybe there is a weight lifted from his shoulders, knowing there's not really an awful lot he can do right now to preserve his spot in the top 5. Now, admittedly, with just over half the session left, it would take quite the miracle to put him back in the top 5, but miracles have already been evidenced to happen in this championship so far. Never say never on the prospect of the 120 returning to the top 5. We'll catch on with him in a little while's time. We now look at the car behind him, Alex Albert, who's got his hands full here. Now, well, he may inherit 4th place off of the 120 up in front whenever he does choose to come to the pit lanes for his drive-through penalty. This could be that opportunity, and no, staying out. So Simard's still looking to run things long. He's got 1 more lap to do this, so it's now or never on lap 9 of this race. Staying on board with Albert. It's going to be a free position, but looking there in the background, moreover, if we get a look over his rear view, just gazing off in the distance there on the exit of Redgate, that is the 616 of Andrew Veldkamp in 6th place. 1.1 seconds to potentially close on that 36 in the next 16 minutes of racing. As we get towards the halfway mark, here's the current landscape of things. Christian LeBay leads with the fastest lap by 5.6 seconds. David Tanguay on a very, very solid result so far. 2nd place has held on vehemently to where he qualified in an exceptional quali performance today for the number 30. Richard Cecil, a man on a mission with a serious point to prove. It wasn't his qualifying session to be for quali 1 today, but it certainly has been his race. He puts himself currently on the back of that podium after a very ambitious assault on the number 120 and the number 36, and I do say that because it is warfare tactics for the number 5 here. No quarter given, no prisoner taken. Cecil in 3rd ahead of Simard and Albert to round out that top 5, but that's soon to be Albert and Veldkamp with Simard in that drive-through penalty spot. Out through turn 11, Skino asking what's the fastest lap. What a one. Looking here, fastest lap so far, 127.877. So it seems there for Christian LeBay. Oh my goodness, that's trouble for Vincent Simard, and I think I might be able to piece together what's gone on from there. Looking back through the replays, now you have to take a look through the timing charts. Yes, he... Oh. Oh, dear. Oh, dear. Oh, dearie, dearie, dearie me. I think I know what's going on there. It doesn't take Sherlock Holmes to tell you that one, folks, but he's gone for the pit lane entry, only for it to then be revealed right at the last second that it's been blocked off by barriers, and seemingly, even though those look like plastic barriers, concrete look like what they were filled with, as now Simard has been given a stop-go 30-second penalty for his infractions in the pit lane. So while his drive-through has cleared, it has come at great cost to his performance today. So, resizing what the landscape is like. Nothing's changed in that podium right now. LeBay, Tanguay and Cecil, as per the last report, with Alex Albert now up to 4th, Andrew Velkamp to 5th, Martin Della Chevrotier in 6th, with Casey Miles, I must say, on a remarkable performance. Started outside of the top 10, now finds himself in 7th place. Christophe Dupois in 8th place. Vincent Simard, we can see there, not actually too far from Miles. Actually having a look here, so Dupois is actually up ahead of Miles, so that's not refreshed in time. But as you can see now, the 96 in 8th place being attacked from 9th. And despite that stop-go 30 and the damage on the nose of the 120, Vincent Simard is not giving up this fight here in race 1. Up the inside through the S's. Almost no room there for Casey Miles, but what that does invite is Clinton Bourne the opportunity to take not one, but potentially 2 positions here. The Australian up the inside on Miles, then up on the inside of Simard, but runs all the way deep into the gravel at the Melbourne hairpin and clatters the wall. There was the vision. There was absolutely the vision to be considered there by Clinton Bourne, and well, fair play to him. He did commit to it, but perhaps a lunge a little too lofty for the number 6 this time around. Simard back into the pit lane. Now to service stop go 30. He'll drop out of the top 10 in its entirety, with Clinton Bourne now picking up the mantle. Julio Bahena not far from him at this time. We see Stephen Black with considerable damage. That face just hanging off there. And that's 707 doing its best impression of Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies by the looks of it there. That is a grotesque sight over the nose of that Jaguar. Hopefully he's into the pit lane soon to get that one patched up. You also see out on track, and now I wasn't expecting him to have actually made a start to this race, despite the fact that he was a late join into this race so far, but that is Timo de Tosto out on track, so he is going to try at least to see a result in today's race. He will be, admittedly, by the looks of it there, 7 laps down. But you've really got to hand it to it at 58. He's come into this, no qualifying session administered. He's not had any time to the chart. He started at the back. He's 7 laps down, but he's out on track. You see here, Dan Junior Poulon fighting with Casey Miles. We also see there from Skino and chat that he'd love to stay. However, he will fall asleep. Great stream as ever. Catch you on the XCL Pro Series. Yes, we will see you in about 2 weeks' time, I believe it is now. With this Saturday coming being a double round, we'll have the HCCL Carousel Cups opening round. We also have the 6 hours of Silverstone over on the NLRL Console Endurance Series. Then the week after that, we've got our last round that we'll be covering with the folks over on the Xbox Community League for their Pro Series. That'll be over in Bathurst for a 2-hour race on the next Saturday coming. So not this Saturday, but next. So yeah, we will see you then. You see, after a brief skirmish between the 44 and the 96, Dan Junior Poulon up to 8th, Casey Miles in 9th. From behind, we see Bahena slowly closing in on Clinton Bourne as some of the nearest fights right now as we close in on the final 10 minutes of racing here in race 1 of 2 in Donington Park. Bahena looking to close the gap. We'll keep a live view on a lot of these, but I think we have just seen things explode there for the number 18. If we catch on with him here, Clinton Bourne is in his iron sights. We're on board with Julio Bahena heading down towards turn 7 at McLean's, letting him through, so it seems, was the number 6. And seemingly also letting through Timo de Tosto before we've hit Coppice. Something is awry for the number 6 of Clinton Bourne, for him to have given away a fight like that so easily. Something to note here for Alex Albert, he is slowly catching on to Richard Cecil. That is one thing to consider right now, and that's also compounded by the fact these two are running into lap traffic, as you can see, heading down through the Craner curve. Still just a beautiful sight, really, isn't it? Seeing that cascading run down towards turn 4. It's up the road. There is Vincent Simard's 120. In through turn 8 we go then at Coppice. Again, it's make or break corner. These two having slightly different lines about it. We'll see whether or not that does improve or degrade from the current gap. Right now, it actually holds an almost dead level before we hit turns 9 and 10. Alex Albert still in pursuit. Good tuck in there through turns 9 and 10. Ample use of the curbs, nothing too excessive. Nice, neat, and tidy for the 36. And you can see it's rewarding him every single time because he's gaining more and more ground on Richard Cecil. We are now more than ever looking at a fight for third place. For Alex Albert, he could be looking. Now, I'm going to take a look through the data here just to back up anything. But for Albert, he is looking upon potentially the chances here in this season. Yes, at his first podium in Jaguars. There's a great opportunity here for Albert. We've seen him in a myriad of machines. I believe we've seen him with... trying to dig back through the memory here. I believe he was with Chevrolet for some time in GT4. We've seen him with Bentley over in the Sunday League. Now we see Albert driving for Jaguar here in the Jaguar GT3 Revival Series. And that really seems to have been the golden ratio for him, because that 36 is finding his best possible opportunities to cement himself in the Competizione Performance League history books, as he's looking for his first podium. But that's the same story right now befell of Richard Cecil in the Jaguar Series. Now we'll have to take a look back through some of the data in regards to the last championship we covered here, that being the GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series Season 1. For Richard Cecil, this is his first ever championship podium. And looking for the sake of Alex Albert for comparison on this data, that is also the same here. So we have two drivers. The stakes could not be higher. Two drivers gunning for their first ever championship podium. Really, that is sort of the beauty that has come from these races. We've seen Byron Forrest's first ever championship win outside of the single races. And now we're looking at the potential for either Richard Cecil or Alex Albert's first ever championship podiums outside of the single races. Now, in regards to David Tangray, it is not his first rodeo on the podium, but it has been his first in a long old time. But the number 30 right now, the last time we saw him on the podium was in the first of two double sprint races back in Alton Park at round 2 of GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series Season 1. That was quite some time ago. That was in his time with Aston Martin. So we are looking at quite the series of firsts, or returns, I suppose I should say, for quite a few drivers. We have to cut away just a moment here, as we do see compounded troubles for the 50. That's Martin Della Chevrotier in trouble just out through turn 8. Let's see if we can catch on here. And oh my goodness, if you thought the damage was bad on the 707, get a look at the number 50. That is a face only a mother could love. Look at the front end of that Jaguar. It's scraping the ground. So that's surely a run to the pit lane. Had ever I seen one, it's going to have to be a bit of a down and out race here for Martin Della Chevrotier. He does find himself at ample distance from either side of it inside of that top 10. 6th place right now, but surely he can't stomach to drive the car for 5.5 more minutes here in Donington in the current state that it's in. I mean, we see already sizable aero damage. Are we seeing perhaps some mechanical damage as well? There, you can see just to keep the car straight, he's holding it 90 degrees to the right. Surely that's a pit lane run. See, having to almost cut across the grass there just to keep the car rotating at the right sort of time. Into the pit lane goes the 50, unsurprisingly so. That is a sizable lump of damage there incurred between turns 7 and 8 for Martin Della Chevrotier. We see from behind here, Casey Miles chasing Julio Bahena. You can see that the 707, Stephen Black, really come into the pit lane. Down through turn 12, just as we saw for Martin Della Chevrotier. No, so Stephen Black is adamant to continue his move up the road here. 5 minutes left to go in race 1 of 2 in Donington. Right now, it's about to be intercepted by the 119 Christian LeBay. Now, this is quite an exciting thing to see for LeBay now that we know the context behind his time with Jaguar and why this has been seemingly quite a clinical experience for the 119, where we could have definitely seen a bit of a lighter side out of Lebay and what is definitely not so much of a serious premise as a Jaguar Cup series. But you can see that he's really been doing his homework. He's been taking a lot of this to heart, and a lot of this has been for the ultimate move, as we've now been confirmed, for that move to Jaguar in competition over on the NLRL Sunday League, which he's already a one-time champion of, and not far, actually, should I say, off of the runnings of being in that fight once more in Season 4. So it is quite exciting to see every step made here is one we will eventually see over on the Sunday League. It all makes sense now, so keep a close ear to the ground for movements out of this one every time we see a series such as this crop up. If you start seeing perhaps a, I don't know, for example, just to throw a couple things out there, maybe an Aston Martin GT4 Cup, I'd be keeping some eyes on what he chooses to drive next season. That's just us throwing words in the wind, really. That's all purely speculation. Just to head back into that fight then for the podium. 3 minutes and a half left to go. Richard Cecil still holding on to it. And now this is really, again, like I mentioned before, still up in the air as to who comes out on the last of those podium positions. It's Tanguay's first podium since Alton Park back in GT4 Round 2 Race 1. For these two, it is the first ever in a championship structure on the Competizione Performance League between either Richard Cecil or Alex Albert. It's a real point to prove here for the number 5. He's been down and out of results for 3 races on the trot outside of the top 10. His best result this season was 4th place. The number 50 now with speeding in the pit lane infractions as Martin Della Chevrotier with salt in the wounds. 3 minutes left to go, and it is palpable in the air, the tension on display between the 5 and the 36. There's a lot riding on the line for these two, a lot to go down on record between Cecil and Albert. We'll catch up with them in a moment's time. Oh my word, we catch on board with David Tanguay as he clatters the 707, caught up after turn 7. Let's get a look here. So we cut away from Cecil and Albert. They made their way to the Craners. This is up through turn 7 as we cut to Tanguay, clatters the back end of Stephen Black. Seemingly a little bit out of control past McLean's. We see for the number 30, it has done quite the wad of damage. The 707 is into the pit lane, potentially out of race 1. A result to forget for Stephen Black. You can see the toll of the damage on the nose of David Tanguay. I think he might just be in the clear. 2 minutes left to go, so he will be looking down the barrel of another lap here in Donington before the end of race 1. That's all regulated by the race leader, Christian Lebay, who crossed the line not a moment ago, still with plenty time for one more lap after this one. We are still looking here, as now caught up by Martin Della Chevrotier, moves over after turn 11, so it seems. Actually, no, he is holding onto his line, so the camera's doing a little bit of disservice to give us the true story as we head down through turn 12 at Goddard's. Is he into the pit lane right off the bat? Yes, and that does give the road a little bit more leeway for Cecil and Albert to continue their move down the Wheatcroft Straight. This could get dicey now with the stakes getting higher and higher. Tanguay, despite his damages, now puts even more time over Cecil and Albert. These two completely tunneled in on one another right now as we approach the final lap in not a moment's time. Looking around the field, we can see very close fighting here. It's contact between Bahena and Poulon out at turn 11. Oh my goodness, we just can't run out of it. Out through turn 11, you can see what's gone on here as we've tried to cut across. Looking quickly back on board with these two on that fight of third in your bottom right-hand side. But there on the exit of turn 11, attempting to rejoin. But there, he's definitely tried to rotate the car in, but Bahena's just not had any room to do so. I'm not entirely sure what you'd call that, but I can't really attribute malice to something of that manner. So that final lap is coming up for these two after this one right now. And the exit of the S's, they're getting closer and closer and closer at a rate of knots here. And right now, we're also staring down the barrel of a 5th win this season for Christian Lebay. And 2 on the trot, back onto back-to-back wins after missing out 2 races in a row before the end of Brands Hatch. Bear in mind, don't go anywhere. We get to do this all over again. And with right now, one of these 2 drivers on your screen ending up in that quota for the one-shot qualifiers for Quali 2 for Race 2. Down across the line goes both Richard Cecil and Alex Albert in their continued fights for third place. It is all or nothing between the two. We will be cutting away from them just before we get to the checkered flag for the 119. We'll be seeing Christian Lebay down towards the line. We'll also be seeing the number 30 of David Tanguay into his first podium appearance since his time with Aston Martin back in Alton Park at round 2 of season 1 of the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series. But right here in the GT3, the Jaguar GT3 Revival Series, he's taking his first. So out through turn 8, through Coppice we go, but we will have to cut away from these two, as we see here with Christian Lebay making his way down towards the line. It has been an exceptional performance on display today to kick things off here in Donington. Across the line, checkered flag flies for the 119. Lebay wins his 5th win this championship and wins for the first of 2 races here in Donington. Across the line from not a moment from now, here comes David Tanguay on his first podium appearance since Alton Park, way back when he made a podium appearance with Aston Martin. Now he does so with another British firm here with Jaguar, and heading down towards the line for the first of their podium ever in a championship structure here on the Competizione Performance League. A real point to prove, and believe me, it's been made. To the line, Richard Cecil, 3rd place at the end of race 1. Alex Albert in 4th. A valiant performance by the number 5 and the number 36. Andrew Veldkamp to the line to round out the top 5. A solid performance indeed. Making his way down towards the S's as we speak. Julio Bahena looks to take 6th place ahead of Dan Junior Poulin in 7th. Christophe Dupois looking at 8th, trailing there. A car eerily reminiscent to that of his own. Very hard to tell them apart in a vacuum, especially when they're barreling down at triple-figure speeds. From behind him there, that's not Byron Forrest, sorry, that's Timo de Tosto. Byron Forrest, though, seemingly at the back of this grid after an early retirement from race 1 after his incident with Clinton Bourne. Speaking of Bourne, he finishes 9th in this race. Vincent Simard in 10th. Martin de la Chevrotier in 12th. Casey Miles seemingly in 11th. We'll see down towards the line. Julio Bahena for 6th place. Dan Junior Poulin in 7th. And Christophe Dupois for 8th. We'll get a full result in a moment's time. At the bottom line, though, Christian Lebay, your race winner in race 1 of 2 here at round 6 of the championship. Off to a great start in Donington. Sort of highlights of that finishing result here. Of course, David Tanguay's first podium in well over a season. Richard Cecil's first ever championship podium. As we see there for Casey Mout, he got disconnected on lap 17 from P9. So that does explain the discrepancy for the 96 at the end of race 1 of 2. The 707 has braved the storm here. Stephen Black with a repaired 707 makes his way to the line for 13th place. We'll get the full results not too far from now. The bottom line, though, Christian Lebay, your winner in race 1 of 2, now makes his 5th win this season. So we'll wait for that full result to come in, and then we'll take a look down through everything. Of course, what has been a race to forget, perhaps, for Byron Forrest. Rolling on the successes of a win in Brands Hatch has just not been the result to be amidst incidents involving the number 6 of Clinton Bourne. I'm sure there will be an investigation by race control into what has gone on there, if anything at all. Of course, we weren't able to see what happened. What we do know was down at turn 11, so we could reasonably assume the worst. What a very close battle, though. If I really did have to give Driver of the Day nominations here, you'd be looking in the direction of Richard Cecil. There's your full results. Christian Lebay wins in Donington for race 1 of 2. David Tanguay in 2nd with Richard Cecil in 3rd. So there's your 3 one-stop runners, Lebay, Tanguay and Cecil. It's Tanguay's 2nd week in rotation on the one-stop qualies. The one-shot qualies, I should say. Cecil getting to see his first ever one-shot quali. He's 3rd at the end of this race. Alex Albert 4th. Andrew Veldkamp in 5th. Bahena 6th. Poulin 7th. Dupois in 8th, Bourne 9th, and Simard in 10th, Miles in 11th, with de la Chevrotier in 12th, Black in 13th, and De Tosto managing to finish the race in 14th place, despite starting from the pit lane and, by the looks of it there, 6 laps down. That's admirable. 1 DNF today then, the 824 of Byron Forrest. So not far from the discussions of Quali 2. Now to keep your eye on 3 drivers in particular. The 119 of Christian Lebay, the number 30 of David Tanguay, and the number 5 of Richard Cecil. How the regulations work right now, taking a brief look towards the regs once again. Podium finishers for race 1 get only 1 flying lap in the qualifying for race 2 coming up right about now. 10 minutes of qualifying set to follow in quali 2 with another 30-minute race just around the corner before we wrap up here in Donington. So these 3, whether it's valid or not, have 1 shot. We saw Tanguay had a great turnaround. Admittedly, with that 1 shot quali, did have him quite a ways down the field for the start of race 2 in Brands Hatch last week, but he was fastest of the 3 podium sitters. The question therein remains, when he's got much more stiff competition out of that of Christian LeBay, can he replicate some of that magic once again? Now, the question hopefully will be answered very shortly. We do have this overlap timer for the end of each session. We're not far from the start of qualifying, and here it is now. So, another 10 minutes of qualifying, and are we expecting to see the number 5 earliest out of the pits as we saw back in Quali 1? Does seemingly appear to be the case, but intercepted before the exit by 120 and 18. That's Simard and Bahena out of the pit lane early doors. There's Vincent Simard out onto the track. Julio Bahena following in his stead there. We'll be keeping a close eye, though, on our main 3. Those podium sitters will get 1 opportunity in all. Now making his first appearance in the qualifyings here in Donington Park. We do try and catch on board with that of Timo de Tosto, making his way down through Redgate. The number 50, Martin Della Chevrotier, following in his wake there. Alex Albert on his way out of the pits. We've still not seen any word from those 3 at this time. Normally, earliest out of the pits there would have been the number 5. We can see him drop off of his air jacks, and right alongside him there, another one-stop, I keep saying one-stop, one-shot runner is the number 30 of David Tanguay. No movement so far from either of them, and this is all going to have to be played quite tactically. Making his way out there, you can see the 39 is Christophe Dupois. The 616 remains stationary in the pit lane. That's Andrew Veldkamp. Then just behind our scoring charts, you can see is Stephen Black all the way to the left-hand side, and then in that black and mint, I would say, mint green 96, that's Casey Miles. See here, though, down towards the line to become the first of our drivers to start their flying laps in qualifying 2. Here is Vincent Simard. Now, the main focus of this quali session are going to be our 3 one-stop runners, because it's going to be, I keep saying one stop, folks. I really just can't stop. 1-shot runners. I'll let the graphic do the talking for me when time comes for it. Those 3 one-shot runners are going to be the main focal point of Quali 2, because it's really all riding on the line there for the podium sitters. But Vincent Simard becomes the first to start their flying laps here in Donington for Quali 2. To give you a brief reminder of the qualifying predictions looking back through it, you can see it was originally predicted LeBay, Bourne, Poulin. We got a broadly different result there, the only common symptom being LeBay on pole position. Then from behind him, we had a much more lively start. It was Tanguay. And then looking at it from 3rd place, I think it was Poulin, if I'm not mistaken. If not, I will have to double check that. Seemingly completely blanked my mind. Totally caught up in the result of the race, let alone the qualifying that came before it. There you can see the overall look of those qualifying predictions. Now we've already seen that they're quite blatantly out of line, because reality is far from what we were predicting it to be. Follow here with Simard on his way out through turn 11 down towards turn 12, so we'll be putting those times on the charts not too long from now. Still no news right this second from the number 5. Actually, yes, there is news, as Cecil is out of the pit lane. Simard down towards the line. The 119 is not too far from starting the first of their 1-shot quali, so we'll be catching on board with Christian LeBay. We see the first rung of times running there. Vincent Simard, Dan Poulin and Julio Bahena, with Poulin fastest by 0.02 of a second. So this 1-shot quali system could have a real impact here, since it has brought the amount of time available way down for some of the heavy hitters in qualifying today. We see Timo de Tosto now 3rd fastest. Martin Della Chevrotier 5th. A big step out through Redgate for De Tosto. Can he keep it from the walls? You can see with sizable run on the inside of things down at turn 1. Very likely so. Let's catch on board then with Christian LeBay. This is set to be an exciting one for him as he makes his way onto the start of his 1-shot qualifier. On board with last round's race winner, the last race's race winner, and 2 times on the trot, mind you, coming out of Brands Hatch and into Donington Park on board with LeBay in his one-shot quali. So let's see if we can go and catch on board with that 119, get some onboards with LeBay on his way down through the old hairpin, now up through Starkey's Bridge. Also some information to hand. The number 5 is starting their one-shot quali in a moment's time, so we'll be catching on board with Richard Cecil not far from now. Still no news on movement out of David Tangway, so a remarkable show of affairs right now. We're nearly halfway in the qualifying too. LeBay not far from the line as we speak, making his way down Starkey straight in towards the S's on his one-shot quali. It has to be make or break here for LeBay. Even one step over the track limits is the end of his qualifying endeavours, and he'll be starting toward the back of this field. So it's all or nothing for the 119. Can he usurp the fastest times, even by a smidge, in one fell swoop? So I believe we did just see trouble for the number 5, Richard Cecil, seemingly out of the one-shot quali as he does effectively DNF his quali time. We'll see. It's not the case for Christian LeBay. He does make his way down towards the line. The question is it valid? A 128.665 puts him at currently the pole position in one fell swoop. What a turnaround for the 119. So a series of highs and lows. Richard Cecil fumbles his one-shot quali and now making his way out. Here's David Tangway, the last of our one-shot qualifiers. The number 30 makes their way out of the pits. 4 minutes left to go. The track a little bit more sparse than when it started off. Already 9 times on the charts today and leading them in one lap there. Run and done. Christian LeBay on pole by 0.7 of a second. Simard second with Dan Junior Poulon in third place. We'll just see here with Simard down towards the line. Could he look to usurp those times now with 4 minutes left to go? Still quite a few ambitious times coming in. Clinton Bourne now second fastest. Vincent Simard to the line and seemingly couldn't make an improvement into second place. Dan Junior Poulon to the line and was forced down to 5th place by Julio Bahena. As he crosses the line, he'll say, I'll take 4th right back off of you. Those two separated by the looks of it there by 25 thousandths of a second. Number 616 to the line. Here comes Andrew Veldkamp. From behind him is Alex Albert up to 4th from 7th place. And from behind them, the 50 of Martin de la Chevrotier from 9th stays there after that last lap just gone. The number 39 of Christophe Dupois not far from the line here down towards turn 12, but we'll be catching on board as we pull up the onboard cameras once again with the number 30 not far from his trails on board with David Tangway. We stay here to find David Tangway down towards the line to start his one-shot qualifier. The last of our 3 then, the last of our podium sitters to take to the track here, with the number 5 failing to set a time on the charts. The 119 setting currently what is the fastest time on the charts. Where does Tangway find himself in all of this, knowing that he was a competent challenger of the front row? He has a lot less time to work with here, and he's waited until far, far later in the session, potentially to use a little bit more of that track evolution. The track's a little bit more rubbered in than when LeBay was out on track a few minutes ago. And all of this just quantifies into what could be a make or break lap by David Tangway. Already off to a very strong start here, out through turn 7, making his way up to turn 8. We see here IB Schofield Racing is rating with a party of 15. Welcome to TRTM for tonight's coverage of round 6. We're here in quali 2 and a very exciting one-shot qualifier for one of our podium sitters out of race 1. This is David Tangway making his way down through turns 9 and 10. Down towards turn 11 we go. Just under 2 minutes left to go. Not that it's going to matter too greatly to David Tangway on his way to the line. This is his one opportunity to put a time on the chart. We see for the other 2 podium sitters out of race 1, the number 5 of Richard Cecil sadly failed to set a time and will start toward the back. Christian LeBay, who won in race 1, managed to put his car up to pole position in one lap alone. Tangway to the line then. Where will he position himself? Currently 12th with no time on the charts. To the line, it's pole for David Tangway. A real turnaround for the number 30. I don't believe it. Down to the line at 128.382. It is jaw-droppingly fast for the number 30. An unbelievable statistic, folks. I did not expect by that much of a margin for Tanguay to blow him out of the water. Not only has Lebay lost pole position, but he's lost the front row in its entirety. Alex Albert now up by 800ths. The 36 at the end of Quali 2 onto the front row. To a real series of highs and lows. We did thought that we saw the start of it there with Richard Cecil's problems in qualifying. You can see the number 5 will start at the best of times right now in 12th place. That's soon to be potentially 13th here. Casey Mal's still out on track. If he can put even one time on the charts, that's enough for 12th place. Down through to turn 11 at the Melbourne hairpin. This is looking dicey here with a very, very surprising deployment of that one-shot qualifier. Tanguay onto pole. I believe that might be Tanguay's first pole position in any Competizione Performance League championship. So we are really riding on a series of firsts. We had Byron Forrest's first ever win in the Competizione Performance League championship structure last round in Brands. We got our first ever podium for Richard Cecil. And now David Tanguay on his first ever pole. It doesn't get any sweeter than that. Casey Miles at the end of quali then 12th place. We wait for the arrival of the last of our drivers to set times on the chart. The 707 of Stephen Black, who ended on a low note out of last round with serious front end damage, still made his way to the line to finish 13th. All things said and done. The 44 not far from the line. We watch here with Dan Jr. Poulon, who was a serious competitor out of Quali 1 in the end of Quali 2. What can the number 44 do here? The Canadian down through to turn 12. What can Poulon do? On his way to the line from 7th. It's not far to put himself into 6th, and he does so up the road from Timo de Tosto, right at the very, very end of qualifying. Into the pits we saw in the background there went Julio Bahena, but what a result and what a shock decision. David Tanguay on pole position for race 2 today. Alex Albert on the front row, and Christian Lebay on a very unorthodox position that he's not used to. 3rd place on the 2nd row, and mind you, separated only by, looks of it here, 15 thousandths of a second to Clinton Bourne in 4th. We'll see what the kind of starts are predicted for Lebay. Now, he actually finds himself, rather fortunately, as we discussed back at the start of race 1, he's in that power play position. He's in 3rd place. He'll be trailing dead on the line of the leading number 30 of Tanguay down through to turn 1. So he's got that chance to get up on the inside of Alex Albert if he glues himself to that 30. But all of that solely relies on the opportunity resting in the hands of David Tanguay to take that initiative. We saw that he even tried his way around the outside of Redgate at the start of race 1 today. For Alex Albert, he's really got his hands full for this one. Right at the end of qualifying then, onto the grid for race 2 today. Now, to surmise what's going to happen here, another 30 minutes of racing to follow before we wrap up operations here in Donington Park. David Tanguay onto his first ever pole position. The number 30 alongside Alex Albert to put Christian Lebay on the 2nd row. The 36 starts in 2nd place. Christian Lebay in 3rd. Then the current defending champion of the Competizione Performance League took his championship in GT4s. Now really does find himself pressed up against it. 3rd place and alongside Clinton Bourne by not a wide margin whatsoever. Rounding out the top 5 then, Vincent Simard on another solid qualifying performance for the 120. He's up the road there. Rounding out the 3rd row is Dan Jr. Poulon in 6th place. In the 4th row, Timo de Tosto on his first qualifying session here in Donington after missing out and joining late into last race. He now finds himself 7th in the almost slap bang middle position of the grid today. He's up the road with Julio Bahena to round out that 4th row in 8th place. Andrew Veldkamp in 9th ahead of Martin Della Chevrotier in 10th. Christophe Dupois in 11th. Casey Miles in 12th. Richard Cecil in 13th after fumbling that one-shot quali, with Byron Forrest in 14th. Stephen Black in 15th. You see quite the jumbled mass there of drivers I wasn't expecting to be towards the back of that field. Byron Forrest not having set a time seemingly there in qualifying. Last week's race winner in race 1 now starts 14th. But all eyes then to rest upon that front row. David Tanguay and Alex Albert. Now this is a real shocker because Tanguay, we've already seen front row capable performance right here in Donington. I was not expecting by well over. And normally we see these qualifyings go down, at least when it is not Lebay on pole position. We've seen it when it's been Badiali, when it's been Villorio. It goes down to thousands. It goes down to hundreds. Tenths is another story entirely. Could this be the kryptonite of the 119? Well, he should be sure hoping it never shows up on the Sunday League calendar, but never say never in regards to that. Taking us away then onto that formation lap in about 20 seconds time. All engines will fire up here for the run into race 2. Another 30 minutes under the sun here in Donington Park with a much broadly different look of the front row. Tanguay, this is an alien experience for him. Normally, he's been staring up the back end of the 119. Normally, he's been seeing maybe eye to eye with him at a push, as we saw at the start of race 1, but never before has he seen roads as open as this one. It's going to be an exciting tale for the 30, who starts from pole. On board then with David Tanguay. You can see right in his rear view mirrors, you see they're peeking over that rear windscreen. Is the 119. He'll be following dead on to his line. He's going to be hoping that Tanguay can outpace Albert to turn 1 at Redgate so that he can follow him through on the inside, get an easy overtake on the 36, and then prioritise a focus on the race lead right off of the bat. But we'll see exactly how all of that pans out. A lot of it is dependent on the leading driver. And Tanguay can be especially cheeky about this one and force a side-by-side move between himself and Albert, those two effectively blocking the entire width of the road through turn 1. Now it's sort of controlled chaos in that sense. You can never really predict if a driver is going to do this or not, and they never really know what's going on until it's happening, and therein which presents an inherent risk for big incidents like we've seen not too long ago. Down through the crane as we go then. Tanguay from Albert. Looking down through that field, Vincent Simard into the top 5 again. We see Clinton Bourne much further up through the order now into 4th place. It's looking like a very strong start again for the Australian, where things had definitely gone a little bit pear-shaped through that last race. He's now got a much more confident demeanour about him, that number 6, looking at a much more competitive start here. He's staring down the back end of a podium. If anything is to occur on that front row, he'll be among the first to know about it. Looking further around that field as well, just to see a scope of some other things. Alex Albert could be looking at his chances for a first ever race win in a Competizione Performance League Championship. Same too is the story for David Tanguay. There's a lot of anticipation surrounding that front row. These two looking to put themselves in the history books here in a season that has been dominated by Christian Lebay. There have been very few opportunities up until today for other drivers to come along and take those victories for themselves. I think the last time we've really seen that proper was out of Badiali, was out of Forest. And heading into this round, it's now a 5th race win for Christian Lebay out of round 6-1, and what it would be on that charts there. The first of our 2 races in Donington, but let's see how that second race pans out before we ever put anything on those previous winner charts. New names could be arriving today, or it could be back-to-back wins to make a hat-trick of victories for Christian Lebay. Only time will tell us different, and 30 minutes will decide their fate here in Donington Park for the last of 2 races today. Let's get on board as you see further down the line towards the back of the field there, among them Stephen Black, Byron Forrest and Richard Cecil. But let's get a look toward the front before we head down towards the checkered line. Only carnage to follow here in Donington for the last of 2 races today. Then for round 6 of the Competizione Performance League Jaguar GT3 Revival Series powered by Malwa Transport and Assure Action Transport Expert. For the last time today then, we are green and racing here in Donington Park, and a fantastic start already onto the defensive there by David Tanguay to put himself onto the racing line. Cuts off a move from Alex Albert. Through goes Lebay up the inside on the 36. Following in the 36's trail is the number 6 of Clinton Bourne. We see further down the line, Vincent Simard now up to 4th place, Bourne down to 5th. Poulan in 6th place, now up the road from Bahena. It is Bedlam down through the craners in towards turn 4. A great start by Simard. Albert holding on to a podium position right now, but he's dropped position to Christian Lebay. You can see just how close it all is up through these winding middle sections. Now in through turn 7, looking for a little bit more on the inside. Yellow flags are out. It's the number 39 of Christophe Dupois in trouble out through Starkey's Bridge, turns 5 and 6. Now on the exit of turn 8, losing a little bit of steam there on his pursuit of third place. Vincent Simard now finds himself a likely target of that number 6 right behind him. Rounding out the back of that top 5, Clinton Bourne, a man on a mission, a return to the top 4. This is the first hurdle among them. Now on the exit of turn 10, all drivers having a little bit of a rocky start here. You see Clinton Bourne potentially under attack. Julio Bahena up the inside. The number 6 and the number 18 side by side through turn 11. Can he hold his mantle, though, down towards turn 12 as it flips on its head to put Bourne on the inside to defend for position? Bahena goes earlier on the brakes to try and switch him around. He's found the room on the inside in a very rare sight here. Normally, he gets the nose snipped off. Now finds himself once again in a drag race down the Wheatcroft straight toward turn 1 at Redgate. What can Bahena do here in his pursuit of the top 5? He's running things around the outside and closed off for a potential switchback on the latter part of the apexes here at turn 1. Never say never, though, for Julio Bahena. He's really put his heart and soul into this one here. The number 30 still leads. You can see not far from him there is the 119, a faint black and green blur in the continued pursuits, as now seemingly taking the lead was the 119. Christian Lebay up to the leading position with a 30 down to second. All the meanwhile, we're on board with Bahena, continuing to follow for a battle of 5th, but Clinton Bourne is not letting this one slide. He is quickly off and up the road. Dan Poulin and Timo de Tosto closing in fast on Bahena. Looking back up through that field, though, we do see a change for race position, as now Christian Lebay leads here in Donington. Very short-winded assault for the lead by the 119. That was short-lived for the number 30, David Tangray, down to second place. Question is there method to the madness for the number 30? Could he be looking to potentially surf the line off of Lebay, knowing that if he can find even a slight correction over what the 119's doing, he can keep pace for the majority of the race, force that pressure onto Lebay and potentially make a mistake? Doesn't seem to be the case, because it is very, very hard to keep track with a car as fast as the 119. Down through the order, we can see here Timo de Tosto sandwiched in between Andrew Veldkamp and Dan Junior Poulin. Down towards turn 1 we go. The 58 really getting a wriggle on here. He has since dropped to position from the start of this race. I believe started 7th there, now finds himself in 8th with Poulin up to 7th. 26.5 minutes left to go, so already 3.5 minutes strong through race 2. Off to a little bit more of a tame start than one was expecting. I was expecting a little bit more elbows out now that the drivers have been a little bit more acclimatized to the track, similar to what we saw in Brands Hatch, minus maybe the 14 or so car pile-up we saw down Paddock Hill. Right now, things running smoothly out through turns 7 and 8. We saw a little bit of wide-out action there for Dan Junior Poulin. Timo de Tosto could be finding an opportunity to move to 7th not too far from now. Looking up through the order, Lebay leads. Tangray now 1.2 seconds clear in second place. We see down the order here, this is for 11th place. Martin de la Chevrotier versus Byron Forrest. Richard Cecil now into the top 10. Already back into the pursuit of a potential top 5 today. He's got quite a lot of time to play with right now. Present target in front of him, Andrew Veldkamp in 9th place. We're watching here Martin de la Chevrotier defending for 11th place. Now this is an ambitious one for him, finding his way down towards turn 12. Byron Forrest is not an easy driver to keep off your tail. At 8.24, despite having started that far down the field, we know he's got the pace to be much further up through the order, so he's just waiting for the opportunity to slip on by past the 50 of de la Chevrotier to continue his charge up towards Cecil, Veldkamp and Itosto on 10th, 9th and 8th. We'll catch up with these two in just a moment's time, though. We do take a look around the field to find a very close fight going on here. Andrew Veldkamp versus Timo de Tosto. Now, this is for 8th place as opposed to 11th. Getting on board here with the defending car of 2, Timo de Tosto on the exit of the old hairpin. Now up through Starkey's Bridge in towards McLean's at turn 7. 58's got his hands full with the 616 in hot pursuit, and as you can see, a little stumble over through turn 7 is only sweetening the deal for the 616. Now through Coppice we go, and the 616 has a great opportunity to pursue here down the Starkey straight, down towards the S's, as he's got him in the slipstream. He'll be reeling in that 58 slowly but surely. We have to chance himself down towards turns 9 and 10 here. not to try and be a hero. We've seen already track limits are thick and fast in that third sector. We do see more yellow flags. It's for the middle sector right now for the 707 Stephen Black in trouble between McLean's and Coppice. Up the order, we can see Bourne v Bahena kicking off into full swing, as it will surely be in a moment's time. Watching here, Clinton Bourne, number 6 in pursuit. But then pursuing him as well in almost equal stead is Dan Junior Poulon in 7th place. A three-way tie for the back of that top 5. Down through the Craner curves, you can see that top 4, or I suppose the top 5, actually yes, it would be the top 4 because that is the top 5 we're seeing right in front of us there, that being Julio Bahena's bright fluorescent highlighter green number 18 Jag. But that top 4 has quickly dissipated now. They are a distant memory of one another right now as it stands. LeBay from Tanguay, from Albert, from Simard. We see, though, Clinton Bourne still looking for even a millimetre up the inside here on Julio Bahena to have a chance to strike into that top 5. This is absolutely on the register for Bourne. Just what the doctor ordered, really, for that number 6. He is looking to gun back to the top 5. He started in that top 5 in today's race, started in, I believe, 4th place. So for Bourne, he really does want to recapture some of that magic, and starting from that point is a fight for 5th place. As you can see, it is a leapfrog if he can get up past that number 18, because right up in front of him there, that dark blue number 120 is 4th place. That's Vincent Simard, who has dropped back quite dramatically, I should add, in the last couple of laps here. He does actually find himself growing to be a victim of a potential fight for 4th place. In the background, we see Richard Cecil now up past Andrew Veldkamp, seemingly there. 9th and 10th between the pair, with Timo de Tosto up through the order as well. You can see there that white number 58 closing in on Dan Junior Poulon. Still watching with Bourne. I think we are about to see quite an elevated fight here. First for 5th, could be next for 4th. Cut off there on the exit of Redgate, then down through the Craners. All of this is just backing up one of that 44 of Dan Junior Poulon. A big concertina effect with Bahena really sticking his elbows out here. He's not looking to be overtaken anytime soon. You can see they're actually off in the distance. That was a point I was talking about earlier. That's a plane landing down at East Midlands Airport. I did say that ran parallel to the Starkeys and Wheatcroft Straits. I wasn't wrong in that assertion. That would be a mighty view from up there in that private jet. Out through turn 8. And onto the Starkeys. Very, very close now, the distance between all 3 of these drivers, and that's inviting in more from behind. Timo de Tosto, you can see they're lurking over the rear view of the number 6 of Clinton Bourne as he tries to lurk over the rear view of Vincent Simard up the road from him. Closest, though, is that 3-way split between the number 18, the number 6, and the number 44. Now, these are a bit of a elbows out prone bunch, the 18 and the 6 especially, so watching these two meet on the same playing field can definitely be a sight for the eyes. And the 44 from behind him here, Dan Junior Poulon, trying to sort of clinically navigate this crowd. Moreover, I think the driver with the heaviest weight on their shoulders there is definitely going to be Vincent Simard. He is staring down an armada in his rear view mirror, and it can't be a reassuring sign for anyone. As we cut away from Bourne, we're going to catch on board with Bahena, because he is getting closer and closer here to a chance to fight with Vincent Simard. So now on board on what is going to be that fight of 4th place, we get on board with Julio Bahena in the number 18. Right behind him is Clinton Bourne and Dan Junior Poulon. Let's get a quick look here whilst we stay on board with these drivers with the current scope of the standings 10 minutes into race 2. With LeBay leading now by nearly 3 seconds to Tanguay. Albert finds himself still on the podium, but down an extra position. Same story as Tanguay. Started in 2nd, now down to 3rd. Simard in 4th, with Bahena on your screens at the moment. Less so, I would say, in that fight for 4th. Now more than ever in a defensive fight of 5th place. Holding on to the position he currently covets. That number 6 right behind him is Clinton Bourne, charging with barely any room between the pair of them on the exit of turns 9 and 10. Then from behind him, that dark British Racing green number 44. That's Dan Junior Poulon in pursuit of Clinton Bourne's black and green. We see Vincent Simard really gets closed in, so there is that chance for the fight of 4th place. Julio Bahena now up and alongside on the exit of turn 11. He'll be on the outside towards turn 12. So a little hiccup there for the 120 of Vincent Simard has now kicked open the barn gates here for a potential charge to 4th place by Julio Bahena, and an extra position on top for all of the drivers currently following in his stead. Out of the wheat cross straight then, in through to turn 1 at Redgate. This is astronomically close here in the second race. We are seeing much more lively racing than what we got out of race 1 here. Now all of the drivers have gotten used to the intricacies of Donington Park. They are able to let loose with reckless abandon. Out through turn 4, Simard running wide, so this is all good news for Bahena. Looking up through Starkey's Bridge, getting on board then with Bahena. Out through McLean's, a little bit wide there on the exit, but actually carrying more momentum than Bahena. Keeps the 120 in the lively stead there for 4th place. Bear in mind, all of these drivers now really pressing to the back end of that number 18. There's crushing amounts of pressure here on Julio Bahena at the back of that top 5. Something to just quickly point out as we stay on board with these two. Bahena looking at a very ambitious line, I must say there. He is definitely sizing up a move to the inside just to keep one thing in the back of our minds right now. Richard Cecil gaining on Timo de Tosto. Bahena up the inside on Vincent Simard, trying to follow him through. Comes Clinton Bourne in the black and green. It's contact between the 6 and the 120. It seemingly is always elbows out in that section there. It forces Vincent Simard now down side by side with Dan Jr. Poulin, but it's contact between himself and the number 6 and then collected by the 58. I think we could get a rough idea as to what's gone on there. I think that's, they call it in the industry, that's rule number 1 of stock car racing, but I don't think the rule necessarily applies when you're driving an Emil Frey Jaguar. There you can see it. I think the 120 has definitely tapped him on the rear bumper. He is not happy at all with the number 6 and sort of returning the favour there. We see right now, looking further down the line, Vincent Simard down at 10th. Actually, that's all a big shift around here as we see Timo de Tosto's down at 12th place. We see him pressing up to one of the dark blue Jaguars that I believe that to be at this time. Yes, that is, as a matter of fact, Vincent Simard. As they're also running the same livery. Now, this is the Emil Frey Racing livery that was used in real life in the Blank Pan Endurance Series for the Jaguar Emil Frey Racing XKG3, which is the principal part of this series. 2 drivers running the same livery here. Vincent Simard in 10th and Martin de la Chefrotier in what is currently looking to be 9th place. It's 11th for Simard, I should correct myself. So that's easy to confuse the two of them in the vacuum there. The number 50 for de la Chefrotier and the number 120 for Simard. Sandwiched in between them then, Clinton Bourne, who's now already found himself not only a centre of controversy for the race control team, but even the drivers themselves with that retaliatory attack by the 120. You see here, having snuck his way through, the smooth operator that he is, the 824 Byron Forrest, started from the back of the field here, now up to 6th place, and with 4 seconds between himself and Dan Jr. Poulin right now has got his hands full pursuing Julio Bahena in 4th place. Doesn't stand too far off the chances to be within the top 5 by the end of this race. Now, it is a bit of a far-fetched call, but you can see already, having dropped some time off of that, there is evidence to suggest Byron Forrest is on the pace right now to be in that top 5. And with just over half the race still in motion here, there is still a lot riding on the line for the 824. If you can turn this one around, that is a serious call for the 824 of Byron Forrest. Where it may have been a bit of a down-and-out performance in race 1, it has been anything but so far in race 2 for that 824. Back on board with Julio Bahena. You can see in the background there, rounding out that top 5 is Dan Jr. Poulin and the number 44. They're down through turns 9 and 10. I think Bahena, like many drivers caught up in those incidents from earlier on, is reeling from a little bit of shell shock for what happens down here at turns 11 and 12. You can see in the background is that I almost want to say Aston Martin podium green turquoise colour there on the 824, but I don't think I'm getting ahead of myself here. Probably is a Jaguar colour that coincides with that, but I want to trust my gut feeling and say that that's somehow an Aston Martin reference. I think that's me just blindly searching for the opportunity to mention them. But in the background there, nonetheless, is the turquoise hue of the 824. We do see, though, more yellow flags, and it's for the number 6 and the number 50. So Martin de la Chefrotier and Clinton Bourne caught up in another incident here at turn 12. and seemingly borns into the pits, and that could be him out of this race in its entirety. Now, he's already found himself at the center of a bit of ire from quite a few of the drivers on the field today. Among them was Byron Forrest back in race 1, of which he was caught up in an incident with down at turn 11. The corner just before that, the most recent incident just now. Catch now back on board with the action inside the top 5. We're on board with Dan Junior Poulon now, the attacking of 2. We've been watching on board with Julio Bahena for some time there. Now we take a look from the perspective of the number 44. Currently pursuing for 4th place in through turns 9 and 10. I think it's best to get on board with the drivers just to give you that scope of what goes on down here at turn 11. It's a very bizarrely shaped corner from both the track layout and from in-person account. And what it effectively is 2 rounded off square corners, giving it almost this double apex effect. This is a much more conventional hairpin here. This has got it to turn 12. But where it makes up for its lack of intricacies, such as what we've seen at the Melbourne hairpin, it makes up for in elevation, because it does actually drop a little bit downhill and is ever so slightly off camber. Now that can rapidly increase the chances of a spin out, and such is the case we saw earlier on in today's racing in race 1 for Dan Junior Poulon, where he was in a comfortable top 5 position. He spun from out of turn 12, where he's been kicked out towards the right hand side of the track, collected grass, and the car's over rotated in towards the pit wall. Evidently that's what's created some of the problems earlier on today, but we're not seeing many of them right now. He's learnt from his mistakes very, very quickly, and that adaptability is what's giving Dan Junior Poulon the potential fight here for 4th place. Looking around that field, he's got to hurry along and hurry along quick if he can't get up and ahead of Bahena. He is bleeding time away from Byron Forrest, now within 4 seconds of target distance. 12.5 minutes left to go. From behind him, Richard Cecil in 7th place. Also on a retribution run there. Bear in mind, Cecil, of the 3 drivers to participate in one-shot qualifying, Cecil was the only one never to have put a time on the charts there, because he invalidated mid-run. And I believe it was actually a little bit one more over that. I think he did spin off track during his one-shot quali run. So to put himself not only in the top 10, but to be right now riding on the coattails here of Byron Forrest, who is projected with his pace right now to potentially be within a fight of the top 5, is not too shabby at all. Especially when you consider it was Cecil's first ever podium in a championship format last race. To put things ever closer to another top 5 appearance after what has been 3 races back-to-back outside of the top 10 before today's running in Donington is not too bad at all. It would definitely make up for a lot of the damage ensued towards the end of the American chapter and into the start of what was a cataclysmic race in Brands Hatch at the start of the British chapter of this championship. Now, to give you some context for those of you maybe joining us for the first time, this championship has been almost split down the middle, as it were, or into 3 somewhat uneven chunks. The first 4 rounds were 60-minute races in North America, in Indianapolis, Watkins Glen, the Circuit of the Americas, and Laguna Seca. And we'll have to pick up on that conversation in a moment's time, because Byron Forrest is into the top 5, much to the chagrin of Dan Junior Poulon, who had an incident there down through Starkeys. The 44 now down to 6th place, and actually within grabbing range here of Richard Cecil. Will catch on board in this fight, now progressing for 6th place. We're on board with Richard Cecil, who's now been gifted the opportunity to charge for 6th place. So we'll pick up on where we left off on the calendar in a moment's time, as things just got lively in that top 10 once more. Cecil looking at the middle mass of that road there. You can see he's sizing up his opportunities to move for the inside. Knows he's just a little too far away to be trying anything a little too kamikaze on that number 5. Down towards turn 12 we go, though. The 44, if he keeps leaving gaps open, Cecil is going to be looking to exploit them. Right now, things airtight out through turn 12 for Dan Junior Poulon. So just to quickly cut away on the graphic there to bring back up that discussion of the calendar. That's first half was all 60-minute races. We're now into the second of the double sprint races. That's 2 30-minute races for the price of 1. And that we saw the first of those 2 races in Brands Hatch at round 5, and we're seeing the last of the 2 races in round 6 here, with race 1 already being won by Christian LeBay, with David Tanguay and Richard Cecil on the podium for that first of 2 races. Then we get to see how this one unfolds before we exit round 6. Then we get to do that again on round 7 and again on round 8. Those are the double stint races, and then we're getting to see what even we consider as quite an experimental form here, the triple stint, 3 30-minute races. And seemingly much as we've seen for the qualifying rules introduced for this championships double stint races, where the podium sitters out of race 1 get 1 shot in race in quali 2 for race 2. It's going to be the same story where in race 2 those podium sitters will then have a 1-shot quali in quali 3 for race 3. So we're excited to see how that one unfolds. Of course, we've only got 1 opportunity. That's towards the end of the year over in Heusden Zolder, Belgium at the Circuit Zolder. See exactly how that unfolds. Right now, though, we're back in the here and now for Richard Cecil in his continued pursuits of 6th place. Also seen in the pit lane, or was in the pit lane for some time, was the number 707. He's back out on track right now and up the road from Byron Forest. If we take a look at where things stand here as we drop below the last 10 minutes of the race, with Christian Debay leading by 7.5 nearly there minutes. Oh, sorry, that's a bit of a leap. 7.5 seconds nearly from David Tangray in 2nd place, still looking at another podium appearance. And that'll be his 3rd ever career podium in the Competizione Performance League in terms of championship races, not the single races of which have been running on and off in the last couple of months. Alex Albert looking at this chances for his 1st ever championship podium. Julio Bahena in 4th, Byron Forest into the top 5. We see there, that was the 707 letting through Dan Poulon and Richard Cecil, but a little bit of a hiccup through turn 8 at Coppice is now giving Richard Cecil a fighting chance on the 44. He's in 7th with Dan Junior Poulon in front of him there. That 44 in the British Racing Green and Gold Jaguar is in 6th place. Then from behind them, off by about 2 seconds, Andrew Velkamp in 8th with Timo de Tosto in 9th, Vincent Simard in 10th, Martin de la Chevrotier in 11th, Casey Miles in 12th, Christophe Dupois in 13th, Stephen Black in 14th, and Clinton Bourne, seemingly a DNF of this race, still in the pit lanes in 15th, 6 laps down. Down through to turn 12 we go then. Cecil still in pursuit here on the 44. In the background, you see now having folded back in behind Veldkamp is that of Stephen Black. See both of them running that risk out through Redgate. That slight kick over the grass can be that first domino in a long line that leads to a big spin out. We've seen it already hit a few drivers over the course of today. Dan Junior Poulon was among them. You can see a much slower run out through the old hairpin now into Starkey's Bridge, and it is leaving him incredibly vulnerable. As now looking up the inside, it was such a squeeze between those two there. Good reaction timing, but I'm sure that Richard Cecil won't be particularly pleased with being what he felt like was cut off through turn 7. It was admittedly quite an ambitious lunge by him. We do see off in the background, and it is yellow flags at turn 7 for the 707 of Stephen Black in more trouble. It seems to have been a real area of contention for him over the course of the last 2 races. Not his first time bringing the yellow flags out between 7 and 8. 6 minutes left to go. LeBay is but a distant memory up the road from Tangray now at the lead of this race. Number 30 still clinging on to another podium, but definitely lamenting on what could have been of today's race. See that broad difference in line as well. It's much sharper what we've been able to see from Poulon, a lot more smoothed out from Richard Cecil. This difference in line is keeping them so close to one another. In the meantime, just to bring up as well, there was that brief yellow flag between turns 7 and 8 again, but not for the 707, this time for the 39 of Christophe Dupois. Now, to bring up potential other fights in the nearby vicinity, not including the one that's been on our screen for the longest time, we will have to draw our attention towards the back of the top 10, because Timo de Tosto now finds himself behind Vincent Simard. You can see there by just a little over half a second. And flickering between these two, we also see back on that fight, Cecil v Poulon. See, they're running over the S's. That could be trouble for the 44, but the number 5 didn't have the most graceful of runs either. He'll be looking around the outside. The 44 defends the inside at Melbourne at turn 11. In the background there, you can see is what looks to appear to be that of Andrew Veldkamp in the 616. Ultimately defending position and staving off an attack of 6th place. Dan Junior Poulon holds on to the mantle of 6th place off of Richard Cecil. In through turn 12 we go. We are in those closing minutes of this race right now, and things are definitely getting a little bit more brazen, a little bit more desperate between these two. You can see the signs of flagging in those cars. The tyres quickly losing grip. The Jaguar is not the most graceful of vehicles for tyre conservation. Now, it's nowhere on the extreme end of the scale. We're not talking about the V12 Vantage here, which has been a notorious Pirelli muncher. But this is definitely not been the most graceful of cars. This ain't no 296. This is a very sort of roughneck machine, this Emil Frey Racing Jaguar. What you see is really what you get. You can almost appreciate the earnest nature of it. It is a very rough around the edges kind of car. Almost reminiscent of the Reiter, the RT, I think it's called the RTX, the one based off of the Lamborghini Gallardo, also in this game. And was a bit of a meme car for a while, as it were. But not really found too much around the block anymore. A pity as well. Perhaps that could be the next focal point of a single make car series, the Reiter Cup. That would be an interesting one. I think that's probably where we've been shut down on a lot of those ideas, because I think that might be one step over the line for a lot of people. I think there's more preferable torture methods. We do see up the inside. Here goes Richard Cecil. Now, can he hold the mantle up through turn 11, knowing the 44 is going to try and switch him back? And you can see it, that process already in motion. Dan Junior Poulon sizing up a charge back to the inside. So far, holding on to 6th place is Richard Cecil, but there he's not left the gap too short. And that has invited in the 44, both of them running out wide through turn 12. And it puts them side by side on the run down Wheatcroft, down towards Redgate. Trying to push there, almost the 44 all the way to that left-hand side of the track before they make their way through Redgate at turn 1. This has just gotten a heap more interesting between the 44 and the number 5. Now we catch from what was previously the defending point of view in the continued fight of 6th place. Now we swap our perspective away from Richard Cecil and on board to Dan Junior Poulon. Up through turn 7, you can see it's just not a lot of cooperation on the front axle right now. The tyres just giving absolutely no grip. Both of these drivers properly running it to the ragged edge here. Now, if Veldkamp's done even a slight modicum of tyre saving, you'll see that gap start to bleed away as these two continue to push the envelope out. Someone is going to run into some kind of trouble pushing these Jaguars too far, because as we've seen time in and time again with these older machines in GT3, we've seen it from Aston Martin, we've seen it from Lexus, we've even seen a little bit of it out of Bentley, though I would say they're a little less old than these machines you see on the track right now. You push the car and it pushes back tenfold. They are not the kind of machines that enjoy being pushed around. They are not the kind of cars that are willing to sit there and take that punishment. These are very feisty and very rough around the edges. This isn't the more cooperative nature you get out of modern GT3. This is properly white knuckle. Right now, though, so it seems Cecil has done more than enough in the closing minutes of this race right now, as we will be looking down the barrel of one more lap by looks of things here with the 119, the leading car of Christian Lepay, looking for back-to-back victories here in Donington for 3 in a row, running out of Brands Hatch and into Donington today. He's looking down the barrel on the exit of turn 11 into turn 12 for one more lap of racing. Of course, that's how the end of these races are decided, is by the position of the leading car. And with 35, make it 34, perhaps 32 seconds as he hits the line of 31. We were a little bit short as he crosses the line onto that final lap. We are not too far then from the discussion of the checkered flag, and things are still yet to properly wrap up between Cecil and Poulon. I think it could still shift on its head here. There are still hopes for the 44, but he has really got to start pushing the car out. He's got to start walking on that dangerously thin line between what the car can give him and what it refuses to. Catch on with these two, though, in a moment's time. They make their way around turn 12 in the background here of Byron Forrest, who has now happily made his way into the top 5 on what has definitely been an above and beyond drive for him today. I'd say for both him and Julio Bahena, for that matter, both of them having surfed their way up through the order to make some solid results of today. For Byron Forrest as well, that is a very likely consideration of driver of the day. I will pass that one over on, but I'm a little bit contested myself. I'd like to hear what the people in chat are feeling, or whether or not it would be the case we see what the people in the server over on Competizione Performance League are feeling over on Discord. There's definitely a bit of a split opinion in my mind. I couldn't definitively pin it down to one specific driver. A lot of drivers have wowed expectations. It was a much easier decision coming out of that last round. But as we see down towards the line, we will have to catch on with this. It's just so fast, almost impossible to keep up with pace such as this. Around turn 12, down to the line to receive the checkered flags once more. 2 on the trot here in Donington, 3 in a row. A hat-trick of victories for Christian Lebay. Unstoppable form then for the 119. David Tanguay sees yet another podium. 2 podiums to finish things off here in Donington, back to back. And the last podium he took was the first he's had since season 1, round 2, the GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series. He takes 2 for the price of 1 here in Donington. To the line, his first ever podium in a championship format race here on the Competizione Performance League. Alex Albert in 3rd place. Julio Bahena in a close 4th. Byron Forrest to the top 5. Richard Cecil to the line here, intercepted nearly by Dan Junior Poulon. Those two divided at the end of this race by 7/10 of a second. Andrew Veldkamp to the line for 8th place. Vincent Simard rounds turn 12 to 9th place. Behind him is Timo de Tosto in the top 10. After a very mixed bag for a race today, Martin Della Chevrotier down towards turn 12 to the line for 11th. We'll get the full results up in a moment's time, but once again a win for Christian Lebay. You can see jubilations there on the exit of turn 1. And among them, we saw the 44 of Dan Junior Poulon in the foreground of our screens, but there's your full result. Lebay wins 2 times on the trot here in Donington, 3 times in a row in this championship to make it now 6 race wins strong. He finishes ahead of David Tanguay on another podium appearance, his 3rd in a championship structure. Alex Albert on his 1st ever championship podium in the 36, ahead of Julio Bahena in 4th. Byron Forrest up to the top 5 after starting towards the back of today. Richard Cecil in 6th place, also starting towards the back of today, with Dan Junior Poulon in 7th place. Andrew Veldkamp in 8th with Vincent Simard in 9th. Timo de Tosto to round out the top 10 with Martin Della Chevrotier in 11th. Casey Miles in 12th with Christophe Dupois 13th. Stephen Black in 14th and Clinton Bourne a DNF. 12 laps down after a controversial run here in Donington. But what a dual set of races, and a real treat for us then as we continue our efforts through the British chapter. A very exciting race then here in Donington, and to see where things stack out as we head into the next 2 weeks of racing before the season finale on December 16th, we'll be looking at Snetterton and Alton Park, 2 more of the Motorsports Division lineup in round 7 and 8 of the championship. That's on December 2nd and December 9th. For our broadcasting times, however, because we are broadcasting off of GMT, that will be December 3rd and December 10th at around 1 a.m. So that's all from us here on TRTN. Very well done to all of our drivers then, and very well done to all of our podium sitters over the course of today. That includes Christian Lebay, David Tanguay, Alex Albert, and by the looks of it here, Richard Cecil as well. So the podium, 3 positions, only occupied by 4 different names over the course of 2 races. A fantastic performance by a lot of drivers today. Very well done to Richard Cecil, driver of the day for race 1. I would say it's a bit of a coin toss here, but I would say maybe Byron Forrest in the considerations for driver of the day for race 2 as well. Very well done, though, nonetheless, to all of the drivers today. A very solid run here in Donington. That's all from us here on TRTN. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. Take care and good night.